I'm Waymer.
I'm Lewis.
I'm Steve.
And it's about that time.
You're listening to the Everyone But Us podcast, straight from the heart of London.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Everyone But Us podcast. Obviously, we've interviewed quite a few people throughout the short time we've been around. I think it's 2 years we've been doing a podcast now, haven't we? Mm-hmm. Yeah, about 2 years now.
And we're still rubbish.
Still trying to find our feet. We've interviewed a few people from New York, like whether it's upstate, whether it's in the city itself. So who have we done so far? We've done Brick by Brick. We've done Billy Club. We've obviously interviewed Freddie when we was on tour. But a few weeks ago, we was obviously coming up with ideas who we wanted to speak to. And I was like, you know who I'd really, really want to speak to? Because we spoke briefly when I went to Holland for Sound Revolution Festival a couple of years ago, and I had the chance to talk to Mark from Shutdown for the first time, told how much I liked his band, etc., etc. And I thought, wouldn't this be a great time to actually bring him onto the podcast and obviously let him tell his story about the band and how things progressed for them and obviously up until now at this point. So without further ado, I want to welcome Mark from Shutdown.
Woo-hoo!
What's up, guys?
Welcome, man. Thank you for coming on.
What's up, everybody?
This is an honor.
Very well.
Welcome.
Hope everything's good for you. Obviously, down there in sunny Florida. How's things been with you? You all right?
Things have been good, man. Things have been good. Thank God. Family's healthy. I'm staying healthy. Wife is staying healthy. Just trying to stay busy, man. Shit's been crazy the last year, you know? It's crazy. I never thought that when we hung out, bro, at the Sound of Revolution, November of 2019,
yeah.
Not even a year and a few months ago. I never thought that, you know, that would be like the end all be all of festivals. Like basically like I guess H2O and Gorilla Biscuits and everyone came in January, but you know, Who thought that with persistence, but who thought that would be like the last show? I mean, so shit's been rough, but you know, we were supposed to get to you guys. We were supposed to play London, play the festival for Ready Eye. And we were so excited about that coming back to Europe. Obviously we knew back in like when shit went down in March, I just had a feeling shit was just going to go south and get worse. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
We'll see what happens now, man. I don't really think anything's going to happen this year. I'm optimistic and say maybe shows will come back, but I don't think they're going to come back this year. So
I think there might be a couple of outdoor shows here and there, but
that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. But anything that would be sort of indoors in the capacity that we are used to and know of, I don't think it would be anything like that. But
no, man. You know, it's funny. I got to go see Madball down here in Miami in February, like a month before the shutdown happened. Not our shutdown, but the shutdown. No pun intended. But I was so happy that I got, because Madball isn't, you know, they play down here quite a bit. Freddie actually lives about 20 minutes from me.
Oh, okay. Cool, man.
In South Florida. But they don't play that often that, you know, I'm getting to go see Madball, you know, in my backyard. So I got to go see them. Great show, you know, and I think Cold Side played too, which was great band from Florida. And that was like the last show I went to. That was it. That February last year, that was the last show, you know. And it's like I still think about the whole set because it's like I miss it so much, man. We need shows back quick.
Do you know what's funny? When you're talking about the Sound of Revolution, that's when I first heard about the outbreak in Wuhan, but I didn't think nothing of it. Not thinking that was going to stop everything from February onwards.
That's not, I'll tell you the truth. We actually, I mean, if I have to be honest, I didn't hear any talk about it in November. I remember the first I heard about it was probably around Christmas time. They were talking about people in Asia having it. But if I have to tell you guys the truth, about 2 weeks after the Sound of Revolution, I came home and got like violently sick, like really sick. You know, bronchitis, flu, whatever. I was coughing up blood. I'd never been so sick. And I got better, thank God. You know, without medication, I got better. I was just really fucking fucked up. I thought maybe I just blew my voice out in Europe or some shit.
Yeah.
But, you know, after thinking about it now, I'm like, fuck. I went to 4 countries in 24 hours. The way they booked my flight, I went. I remember, Lou, I was telling you about this. I had a 14-hour travel day. And then I played the show. They flew me out at 1 a.m. the night of the show. So I had 28 hours of travel in 4 countries, like within about 36 hours.
Yeah, that's wild. That will definitely mess with your inner core and how you're feeling, because obviously you're getting in transit into different planes and obviously different environments when you're inside the airport, and then obviously when you're outside of that, obviously the food and the drink that you're around and stuff. So yeah, if it wasn't coronavirus, it was definitely some sort of like winter bug that you picked up for sure. So So, yeah, let's just kick this off to start with. So, Mark, your backgrounds, obviously, before getting into hardcore and stuff, where you grew up and what you did as a youngster and stuff.
I grew up in a pretty big house, not a big house, actually small house, big family, better said. I had 4 older brothers. I grew up in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. Sheepshead Bay, if you guys don't know it, it's basically Coney Island.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Which is like South Brooklyn. South Brooklyn. So North Brooklyn is closer to the city, Manhattan. South Brooklyn is farther away from the city. So Sheepshead Bay is basically just before Coney Island. It's right on the water, and really cool little neighborhood, to be honest with you. Like, they film a lot of movies growing up in my neighborhood, like Goodfellas and Bronx Tale. They film like scenes in the gangster movies in my neighborhood because it's a real old school Brooklyn neighborhood. Cool. But, I grew up in a house where my parents were like working 6 jobs between the 2 of them, and they had 5 kids. I was the youngest of 5 boys, and all of my brothers are, being older than me, were into different things, but 3 of the 4 were into punk rock and metal. And I grew up in the same room as them. My parents didn't have much, so we all slept in the same room. So my brothers would put posters on the wall of all their different bands that they liked. And my brothers were really into like punk and metal back in like the early 80s. So I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I remember seeing, like, I would wake up and Metallica posters on my wall, Slayer posters, and then it got more into hardcore, where it was more, Gorilla Biscuits posters. I remember there was an Underdog poster my one brother had right above my head. The New York hardcore compilations, The Way It Is and Where the Wild Things Are. So as my brothers began to collect records and I was young, 6, 7, 8 years old, sleeping in the same room with them, I was just a fly on the wall listening. And so I really didn't know what the hell I was listening to. You know what I mean? I remember I talked about this in another podcast, but Suicidal Tendencies, my brothers loved them. And I remember listening and listening and listening. And I remember thinking how unique they were and how cool it sounded. It's different, just different than the stuff on the radio. And that kind of was like my springboard into getting into like hardcore music, like Suicidal Tendencies. My brothers would show me different records. I remember like Age of Quarrel and Blood, Sweat, No Tears, Sick of It All. And I remember my brothers just kind of schooling me. My brother Mike, especially. Mike plays for Inhuman and The Last Stand, and he was in Confusion. But he was the one that's older than me, right after me. And he's still 7 years older than me, but he was schooling me like on all this music when I was young. So I grew up in a real music oriented house where, our dad was into like Johnny Cash and Elvis and like Buddy Holly and things like that. But he was always playing records. Like, my dad the record player was always on in my house playing vinyl.
Oh, that's cool, man. Cool.
My mom and dad were like dancing around the house, and that was just the type of house we grew up in. So as my brothers got into it, I was real lucky. I always say this because being young, like, I didn't have to go outside to get the influence of punk and hardcore. Like, it was in my house. You know what I mean? Yeah. So my brothers grew up with a lot of people in the scene too. So as they were 15 and I'm like 6, 7, 8 years old, people like Saab from Marauder were like coming to my house. They went to high school with Saab. So like they were just playing music together. And, this is like when Saab was starting Marauder, and Richie from Dark Side was someone that went to high school with my brother. So these bands, like, it was just an influence on me naturally, where I didn't even know what I was going to do. I didn't know what kind of music, but these guys were always around me. And I was this little kid. And eventually when I got old enough, my brother started taking me to shows. And I was probably about 11 when I went to my first show. Wow. And my brothers, they would take me to a place called L'Amour's, which is a famous club in Brooklyn, L'Amour's Rocks. And they would have, these like hardcore shows there in the early 90s, and they were violent, man. They were like crazy shows. I remember 25 to Life was just coming out. Madball, Set It Off just came out. And I remember going to a show. I was like 13 or 12, and it was a crazy show. And I remember like being floored by the reaction to the bands. Like, 12-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid, I'm looking at Madball playing. Freddie, I could tell he must have been 18, 19 at the time, but he was intimidating. I always tell him this story. I'm like, dude, I was fucking scared, but in a good way, like you saw you saw people, like, I remember seeing people stage dive and like flip on each other. And I was 12 and I was like, what the fuck are they doing? And then they picked each other up and they gave each other a hug, and it was the craziest shit. And I was like, yo, this music is dope. I was like, this is cool, And I came, and after the show, that specific show, I always remember, it was probably July of 92 or 93. And after that show, I told my brother, I'm like, I want to buy every record. Go get me that Madball record. I want, my brother, thank God my brother is good. My brother Mike, John was also into it. But my brother Mike basically started like every day. He was literally like a professor of hardcore. He was showing me every record. This is who this is. This is the youth crew movement. This is the metal movement. This is more of the heavy stuff. Here's, and he was like allowing me to kind of just like embrace hardcore in my own way. I got into my own stuff. Like I was really into Youth of Today when I first got into it. I was a straight edge kid, of course.
Yeah.
Really into Gorilla Biscuits, like diehard Gorilla Biscuits every day playing Start Today.
How did you get in the club?
So it's 16 and over. My brothers I said this in another one. I hate to be repetitive, but my brothers used to put a bandana on me. I was like 5. I'm not a tall guy. I mean, Lou, I'm probably about 5'7", 5'8". At that time, I was like 5'2", and my brothers would like sneak me in. So at one point, the guy at the door would ask for ID, and my brothers had just known him. It was very much a who do you know type of scene. But these guys were like these Guido big like steroid guys. They weren't hardcore guys. They were like bouncers. They're like, yo, he can't get in. He's not 16. My brothers snuck me in at least 3 or 4 times to L'Amour's when I was like 13.
That's dope.
And I would be on stage. And then eventually they would tell me to stage dive because that was like the funnest day. I was like this little kid at a show. So it was like, yo, stage dive, jump off the stage. Don't worry, they got you. And I remember there's a video, my brother has it, like Confusion is playing with 25 to Life, Madball, and Crown of Thorns. And I'm wearing like, my brothers put me in like, I think it was a Slayer shirt or an Obituary shirt. Actually, it was an Obituary shirt. It was my brother's shirt. It was like an extra large. I was like, could have been a fucking dress on me. And I had a bandana on and I flipped off the stage. And I think that's when I fell in love with hardcore. I think in that moment I fell in love with hardcore.
How did your parents feel about it?
So they were not crazy about it, but they knew that my brothers were going to the shows. So my parents were like, as long as you guys make sure he's okay, like you could take him, and that started at like 13. So my brothers didn't take me to every show because obviously they wanted to have fun too. And who wants to be looking at a 13-year-old the whole show? You're at a hardcore show. My brothers were 20 years old. Like, they wanted to have fun. My brothers weren't straight edge. They were like drinking, doing whatever, partying with their friends. They were not about, chaperoning me. After a couple of shows, I made my own friends and they were young, but they were a little older than me. They were like 16, 17. Funny thing is, a couple of them turned out to, one of them is Joe Porfido. He played in Inhuman, but he played in Agnostic Front for many years too. Joseph James.
Okay.
And he was one of the first people I met in the scene. I was like 14. He was like 16. And there's a lot of others too that came up in that Brooklyn hardcore scene in like 93, 94 time.
So yeah, that's what I was going to roll it into, how you came about starting Shutdown. Was it through meeting people at shows, or was it at high school where you met some of your future bandmates and stuff and started a band?
So the same guys I met at those shows actually went to my high school. And in Brooklyn, I went to an all-boys Catholic high school run by Jesuits. And it's called Severian High School. And people know it in Brooklyn. Like, my parents sent me there at the time when I was in 8th grade. My parents wanted to send me there to play baseball because I was like a real big into baseball. And my parents, they had like a really good baseball team. And this is why I went there. But, obviously after I got into hardcore freshman year, I dropped baseball completely. But Justin Brannon from Indecision, he's the councilman now in Manhattan. He went there.
Sick. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was a sophomore and I was a freshman. I was in 9th grade. He was in 10th grade. And all the other Indecision guys had just graduated, but they were guys that I met going to shows. They were like part of that Brooklyn scene. They were just a little bit older than me. I was 13. They were like 17, 18. My brothers were like 21, 22. So they were like a kind of a different, everything was broken off into almost like age brackets back then, Yeah. You had your like 15 to 18-year-olds going to hardcore shows. Then you had the 20 to 25-year-olds hanging out, different scenes. So we connected in high school, and Steve from Shutdown, my guitar player, I connected with him, and within a few months, Justin helped me start the band and wrote a few songs with me, like United. But he was busy doing Indecision. So we stayed friends. We became like, both bands, Shutdown and Indecision, kind of became like brother bands. And, I found Steve and Jimmy, who also went to that high school. They went to Severian High School. And another guy that went there named Anthony started the band with me. He was on the Striving for Togetherness EP. And then Dion replaced him like a year later. So it's all kind of stems from the high school we went to.
And what about the influences in terms of with the bands? Was there any particular influences that you wanted to sort of like to emulate, so to speak?
Yeah, man. I was all about the youth crew stuff. So I wanted to do Judge was like number one for me. Judge was my favorite band. And Gorilla Biscuits, Youth of Today, Side by Side. That whole youth crew style was kind of what we were going for. We didn't want to recreate it exact. I didn't want to be exactly Youth of Today. I wasn't trying to rewrite Youth of Today songs, which a lot of the youth crew bands do, and that was a big thing. So I wanted to kind of write a youth crew influence band with like a New York heavy influence on top of it, if that made sense. Like almost like a Madball meets Youth of Today. That was what we were going for.
Yeah, that's actually a really good description for your band, because it definitely has that element of youth crew, and it also has the heavy breakdowns and stuff. So yeah, that sounds perfect. So going into early releases, like your demo. So obviously I've been doing a little bit of research. So you guys did a demo in '95. Straight after or before that, you put out a split with Indecision.
Was that on Back to Basics?
Yeah,
Yes.
That was like the third release on Rick's label back then. Yeah.
That's the first time I ever heard you guys. Was that 7-inch?
See,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like, that was the thing, like, you know, with Back to Basics, like, people talk shit. Obviously, Rick has his issues now, but like, let me tell you, man, that fucking split 7-inch put us like everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, people, I got mail from the UK, I got mail from Asia, all from that split 7-inch. You know what I mean? So like, I respect the fact that at that time, like, we probably didn't know what the fuck we were, we got ripped off for sure, but it was just a 7-inch, bro. Like, there wasn't tons of money being made. It was a fucking $3 7-inch getting out to the whole world. So for us, it was like, us and Indecision were just happy to do it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, for real. I mean, we spoke about it previously on different podcasts, whether or not we're talking we're interviewing someone obviously like yourself, or we're just having a general conversation. But yeah, the consensus is like, yeah, Rick did do a lot of scumbaggery shit and that, but at the same time, his label made bands well known around the world, and obviously off the back of that, people obviously do their own things once they stop obviously dealing with Back to Basics and dealing with Rick, that they branch out and they go and do their own thing. So in some ways it's 50%, yeah, Rick done a fucking good part, but it's also 50% fuck that guy, because he fucking should have made sure that the band's got their just deserves, like their money and everything.
How did that come about? Did you know Rick, or did he just approach you?
It's funny. I met him. It ties into the story I just told you. When I went to that Lemoore show to see Madball and 25 to Life and Confusion, I told him I was starting a band at that show. That was like the third show at Lemoore's. I was like, dude, I'm starting a hardcore band. You gotta understand, like, I stuck out as like a sore thumb because I was so little. Like, you go to shows now, you see a lot of you little guys, like people bringing their brothers, their kids to shows. But like back then, it wasn't that common. Freddie, of course, was going to shows when he was a little kid by rule of Roger. But like I was, I kind of stuck out. So people would always pull me aside, joke with me, pull me into a little clique for a conversation. And Rick, when I first met him, he was like, yo, how old are you? I was like, 13. He's like, damn, bro. He's like, you need to start a band. And I told him, I was like, I'm already starting one, And he was like, yo, as soon as you start the band, send me the demo, As soon as I started the band, I sent him the demo. He literally was like, yo, I'm putting out your split set. He didn't even ask. I think he told me, he's like, I'm putting out a split 7-inch. I'm just you guys in Indecision. It's going to be my third release on Back to Basics. Me and Justin Brannon, I said, this is so funny. Rick is crazy, man. We met him in the city. He's like, yo, your record's are ready. Yo, we were so excited. We were like, I think I was still 15 and Justin was 16, and we were like, yo, we got our first 7-inch. You know that feeling when you get that first vinyl?
Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah.
Fuck, man. Like, I still could feel it now. And like, he's like, yo, come to Manhattan and meet me. I'm going to give you guys your copies. So he was going to give us a few hundred copies each. That was like our share of, we did the recording on our own, but he was like, I'm going to give you a couple hundred copies each. So we show up, me and Justin, we take the train there, and Rick has this like big, like garbage bag, right? And he opens up the garbage bag, and it's like this like construction paper, like on two sides, and like scissors and paste and fucking records. And he's like, here. He gives us like the actual vinyl, nothing on it, like it's shit with our hands, like just hands it to us. He's like, here, take 50 each for now. He told us we were gonna get like 300. He gave us like 50 each. And he's like, here, take this piece of paper. Meanwhile, we don't even know, like, Justin and me are so like new to the game. Like, we're like, yo, this is dope, Like he gives us like this like carbon copy paper, and he's like, all right, here's what you got to do. When you go home, fold it, cut it out this way, paste it. And he's like, buy these little plastic things. You got to slide it into the plastic thing, and that's your 7-inch.
Oh shit!
And I'm like,
that's DIY, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yo, DIY as fuck, right? So like,
back to basics.
DIY, back to fucking basics. So me and Justin, we weren't mad, bro. We were like, this is what's funny about like today's culture. Like we didn't get mad. Like we were like, fuck this guy. I don't even remember us being upset. Like we got on the train and we were like, yo, can't wait to get home and put these fucking 7 inches together. It was funny because it was a learning experience, but I'm grateful for the fact that at 15, he put us on the map in a way that we weren't, you know what I mean? So, this is before I met Rick, before I met Rabies. I met Rick before I met anybody in New York hardcore. And my brothers were connected to New York hardcore, but they were not connected to the scene in the sense where my brothers weren't hanging out with like, Agnostic Front, Sick of It All, Madball. Like that wasn't their clique, like they watched those bands. That was their favorite bands, but that wasn't like who they were hanging out with. So this was very pre-infancy stages of myself going into hardcore shows and getting into Shutdown. So Rick was one of the early guys that did things for us. You know what I mean? Good or bad. He put us on the map, and I'm grateful for it.
Man, I can't imagine being 15 and just holding a 7-inch by your band. That's like the dream.
It was cool, bro. And even better, like we went to this like all boys high school where like these fucking kids were like Guidos. And I don't know if Guido is a term we use in Brooklyn, but
yeah, I know Guido.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so these kids were like these like as Vinny Stigma would say, Mama Lukes, and just fucking knuckleheads. And we were like these, like we went into school, we had our fucking 7 inches and we were like, fuck these fucking kids. Like we're doing our own thing, and it was kind of cool, and we were like really into it. Like kids began to be like interested in our school. They'd come up to us, be like, yo, tell us some more about hardcore music. Like, what is this shit about? You know what I mean? Where they'd be listening to fucking some bullshit, techno music before that,
Yeah.
So it was being 15. I mean, and at that point, it was just a countdown to the weekend every school week. My school, thank God for me, came easy. So I didn't have to go too crazy with my grades were pretty good, but like I would just wait till Friday, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it would be like drive to a hardcore show. There was so many shows back then. Like you could go to a show in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, like the Wisdom in Chains guys, Richie Crutch and, Jotham, they were the first guys I met in Pennsylvania when I was 15. Crutch and Shutdown played a show together when I was 15. And that was just from like meeting people through Rick, driving to shows on the weekend.
Do you remember your first show and who it was with?
Hell yeah. First Shutdown show?
Yeah, first Shutdown show, yeah.
Yeah, first. So we actually, our very first show was a battle of the bands where we got up during Indecision set and played 2 songs at Fort Hamilton High School in 1994, December. That it wasn't a show, like we don't even consider it a show, but that was technically the first time we got on a stage and did songs.
Yeah.
And Justin played guitar for us, and we played like 2 songs, and it was dope. Like kids went ape shit, and it was fun. Like it was all our friends, it was like the whole crew out, and it was just like, oh shit, let's see, what Shutdown is. So after that, about 2 weeks later, we played L'Amour's. We played a battle of the bands in December. Like it was like the last show for like a few years at L'Amour's. It wasn't really a battle of the bands, but it was like a local show with a lot of different bands. They called a lot of shows like that. They called battle of the bands, but it was a local show. And that was the first actual set we played. And that was December of 1994. And it was just like a local show. I think Indecision played, Joseph James, old band Step Aside played, I think. A lot of old Brooklyn bands played that show, but yeah, that was our first actual show, December of 94.
So how did it feel from going from being someone in the crowd at L'Amour's when you shouldn't really have been in? So, I mean, technically you shouldn't really have still been in the venue at 15 playing.
Yeah, technically I was underage at that show, technically. At that point, they knew me coming to shows for a year. And they knew I was Mike and John's little brother. I was known as Mike and John Scondotto's little brother. I had 2 other brothers, but Mike and John were the ones that went to shows. So it was kind of like a under the table thing. Oh, Mark's here. Okay, don't let the owner see.
No, I was just going to say, in regards to L'Amour's, did someone die there? I'm sure I've read that someone died there or something.
That's a good, crazy that you do that. So I have 4 brothers, and Mike is the one after me who plays an Inhuman in The Last Stand. After him comes my brother John. John played with Life of Agony and Warzone, and at L'Amour there was a fucking show in 1993, and these bouncers were fucked up. They were like these like steroid looking motherfuckers who just tossed kids off the stage when they went to stage dive, and it was dangerous. And this guy was drunk and staged over during Life of Agony and hit his head. He came outside the club bleeding. His ear was bleeding. I was at the show. The fucking guy died on the ride home. brain bleed. He didn't even go to the hospital. The guy had a brain bleed. And they sued the club. It was all over the news. The club got closed down. And that was like the last show at L'Amour's for a long time.
Everyone but us. Straight from the heart of London.
So obviously your first album came out in 95 on Striving for Togetherness Records. I didn't know that was Kevin Gill's record label.
Yo, Kevin Gill's the man. So that was actually not an album, it was an EP. We only did it was like 5 songs. We didn't have enough material to fucking put an album out, you know.
So obviously that was turning the tide, but between the first EP, you did like quite a few singles, and you also did another split with Indecision. Is that correct?
We did the one split with Indecision. We never did another one, but we did we did a tape, maybe what you're thinking of. We did like a demo split. Justin and me were big like into DIY shit. So like we did in between the split 7-inch on Back to Basics and the Striving for Togetherness EP, I probably put out like 3 other demos of like new shit. And then one was a split demo with Indecision. And then another one, we put out a 7-inch on a label in Pennsylvania called Positive Face Records. And it was a 7-inch called Decide. And then Lost and Found in Germany, I sent them a demo. This is a funny story. And I asked the guy, yo, you want to put our 7-inch out? No contract, nothing. 6 months later, he sends me the 7-inch.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Holy shit.
He put it out, like he legit put it out, but didn't ask, nothing. He was like, here's your 7-inch. And he put colored vinyl and shit, and it's called Signs of Change. And he came up with everything. He actually came up with the name. I didn't even come up with the name Signs of Change. The motherfucker named it.
Didn't a lot of people talk shit on Lost and Found though? Kind of like Back to Basics, whereby they just be printing stuff and
Yeah, bro, we picked the worst of the worst, unfortunately, back then. Yeah, I had fucking Rick ripping us off at 15 in Home. I didn't know any better, you know what I mean? Money was not on our mind, let's be clear. Like hardcore, those two things never went together. So we were doing this shit because we loved it still to this day. But like back then, like, yeah, we had Rick doing it to us back home. Now that you put it that way, I'm laughing, bro, because Rick was doing it back home in Europe. Lost and Found was doing it to us. We didn't even fucking know.
Yeah.
You knew Ray B's, didn't you?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know what was he like as a person and how much of an influence he had on your music and obviously a lot of the people in the New York hardcore scene. Like
Ray was cool, man. I met him when I used to hand a lot of demos out. Like I was big into like promotion, you know, like that to me, that's like the beautiful shit about hardcore. Like, yeah, I love going to a show and just fucking talking to people about their band, my band, a new band. You know what I mean? It's really like hardcore is a word of mouth scene, you know? Social media is different now with it, but it's such a word of mouth scene. You know, when you used to go to a show and people would tell you about this like dope new fucking band and like you just wanted to get the demo. I remember people talking to me about Vision of Disorder's demo. And when I heard that demo for the first time, how that shit hit. But with Rabies, I met him at the Wetlands. He was a bouncer at Wetlands was a really cool club that did hardcore punk and ska shows. He was bouncing at a ska show and I was handing out demos outside because I was dating a girl at the time that wanted to go to the ska show. She was a fucking ska girl. And she was all dressed up in ska gear and she wanted to go skank at the ska show. It was a pie taster show and people were dressed up in the white and the black. And it was a whole different scene than hardcore. And I was a straight edge hardcore kid. So I had my backpack on. I had my Youth of Today hoodie on. I was X'd up and Ray B see me outside handing demos out. He's like, yo, kid, come over here. He used to call me kid. Yo, kid, come over here. And I came over, he's like, what are you handing out? And I showed him. He's like, yo, you're straight edge? And I was like, yeah, man. He's like, how fucking old are you? And I was like, 15. He was like, yo, that's dope. He's like, why don't you give me your number? He's like, I'm going to get you on some shows with Warzone. Didn't even hear the fucking demo. He didn't even know, he had no clue what he sounded like. The next day, I remember going home from that show and I told my brother I met Rabies. My brother was fucking mad jealous. He's like, yo, you met Rabies? That's dope. My brother didn't know Rabies. You know, we were fans, you know? Don't forget the struggle, don't forget the street, bro. It's like classic record for me. Next day, he called my house. We had like a rotary phone in my house, and my mom's like, Mark, this older man named Ray Bees is on the phone. My mom was like, my mom knew about the music and shit, so my mom didn't think anything bad. She was just like, oh, must be a guy from a band, you know? At that time, I was making so many friends. So my brother's like, yo, did mom just say Rabies? And I'm like, yeah, I remember I met him yesterday. I gave my number. Maybe he's calling. Yo, straight up, I get on the phone with him. He's like, yo, the demo is dope. He's like, you guys got that old school influence. He's like, I fucking love it. He's like, what are you doing this weekend? He's like, you want to play some shows? And I was like, this weekend? I'm like, my parents might not let me. He's like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. He's like, you're going to tell me all the dates your parents are going to let you play shows. and he goes, I'm going to book you shows with Warzone. And I'm gonna get you guys on shows. And he's like, we're gonna start helping you out. He's like, the youth are what it's about, you know? And then that's how the friendship started. And then he would call me all the time, bro. And we would talk for hours on the phone. And then I would see him at shows, non-Warzone or non-Shutdown shows. Rabies was always at shows, you know? So I'd go to CB's on a Sunday and like see him, and we just began to get really close. Rabies was really cool, like, because he was like, you know, he was all about that next generation. And I was like the youngest, shortest, you know, most like probably immature looking kid at the show, and he was all about taking me under his wing and like showing me like, yo, this is going to be the next generation, you know what I mean?
For real. That
was when he was signing to Victory, and Sound of Revolution was coming out, and then they were touring with The Business, they did a world tour with The Business. And if you guys remember that tour, I'm not sure if you do, but it was like a fucking 3-month tour. They did all of Europe, all of the States. And when they came, he said to me, yo, when we're in New York, I'm going to get you on all the Northeast states for The Business. Because we couldn't we didn't even have a van. We were borrowing our parents' minivan to go to these shows. So we were like, all right, we could do New York, we could do Pennsylvania, we could do Vermont. We tried to do like the Northeast states. So he got us on like 5 shows of that tour. We were like 15, 16, and we were playing. I remember one show we played, it was the Bruisers, which is the first time I met Al Barr. The Business, Warzone, and us in Massachusetts. And the fucking show was nuts. It was a crazy, crazy show, you know?
Was it in Boston?
It was actually outside of Boston. It was in Brockton, I think.
Oh, okay. I've heard of Brockton.
It was a place called Pearl Street Music Festival. It was a Pearl Street Cafe, I think was the name of it. Place closed down. But man, it was the craziest, probably out-of-state show we played to that day. And let me tell you something, Rabies is so funny. Rabies, Mickey Fitz, and Al Barr in a room together, not drinking, but just like partying and fucking having a blast.
Yeah.
And like that, we were kids, man. And like, they thought it was cool, bro. We looked like kids. We were young, and everybody was super cool to us. I don't remember anybody ever being a dick to us, you know? And I look at it now and I see that, because there's a lot of egos in hardcore now. And it's like, bro, like, I look at kids and I try not to judge them, because I'm like, yo, we were those fucking kids, you know? And everybody was mad cool to us back then. And I think that that's a testament to the hardcore scene, you know? When I start to see egos in hardcore and people like treat kids like they're not, you know, they're better than these kids.
Not
like,
worthy,
that's when I know fucking hardcore, something's fucked up, you know what I mean? Because back then that was that special part of it, like Rabies and Roger and all these people taking us under their wing. You know, that's kind of what branches hardcore into like that different realm.
So your album that you brought out in 1998, Against All Odds, how did you go about putting that together? And Jimmy G produced it as well, which is a kind of a mad one, because Jimmy G is obviously that party dude who likes to have fun and he's drinking. And
he's the best. Man. I love Uncle Jimmy.
Yeah. So how did it come about a seemingly a straight edge youth crew band working with Jimmy G, and obviously of Murphy's Law fame? The
evolution of Shutdown, meeting people in New York hardcore as we got to be older. So like I was 15 and I met Rick, right? And then I'm 16 and I met Rabies. After Rabies died, we met Jimmy. And I didn't know Jimmy, I didn't know Roger, I didn't know any of these guys, but at Rabies' funeral, I went, and it was like a really, really sad thing. But I remember seeing all these guys in New York hardcore there, you know, every New York hardcore, like what I would call like icon at that, you know, funeral. And they knew me because of Rabies, but they didn't know me, so to say. Like I didn't have that relationship with any of them, you know? So at that funeral, Jimmy exchanged numbers with me, and his best friend, Steve Pass, who RIP, Steve passed away a few months ago, but his best friend, Steve Pass, was starting to book shows at a club in Manhattan called Coney Island High. And Jimmy and Steve had a production company called Creepy Crawl Productions. And they put out a compilation for a label in Europe that basically like asked them to put together a hardcore compilation for bands on the East Coast. And they asked us to do it. And Jimmy produced the whole compilation. So it was like us, ton of bands. I can't remember all the bands, but a lot of New York hardcore bands. It was a Japanese comp. And that's where we first interacted with Jimmy. And Jimmy was fucking awesome. I love him, man. He's like, I feel like he is family. Like for me, Jimmy's blood. Like I love Jimmy. We got along with him so well. The straight edge thing at that time didn't bother him. It actually made him want to work with us because we were so different from everything else, and that was actually kind of what appealed to us about Jimmy. For us, it was Jimmy G was Jimmy G. Who the fuck cares? Like, yeah, he's a party animal, but that's Jimmy G, Murphy's Law. It's like New York hardcore legend right there, So we were just happy that he was willing to work with us. For real. And then, Tony, when we signed to Victory, he asked us, he said, oh, we got to have somebody that knows what they're doing, produce the record, somebody that can help you guys. And somebody that won't ask for a lot of money. Jimmy got involved with the record. Tony wound up letting him produce the record from that compilation where we worked with him. And he helped us, man. He helped me a great deal. Recording that record, we wrote all those songs in the studio. I had 3 songs. We went into the studio with 3 songs. We wrote 9 songs in the studio.
For a lot of bands, that would be unthinkable because it's like everyone has to know what they're doing. All the tunes have to be ready. Everyone needs to know their parts. So to actually go into the studio and just bang out 6 more tunes to add to the 3 you already had is it's kind of remarkable. Do you think it might have been different if you didn't go down that route, if you had all your tunes ready?
Hell yeah. I can tell you right now, like we always listen to Against All Odds and slightly cringe because of the production, not because of what Jimmy did, but because of, we know, like we put a lot of those songs together, like 1, 2, 3, you know what I mean? And now at the same time, there's a rawness to that record that I listen to now that even like I'll put it on for someone that really doesn't know hardcore and they could hear there's an authenticity to that record where it's not overproduced. It's very raw. It's very like, it kind of hits in your face where like I can appreciate it more now. But I could tell you like just straight up, like we were a little bit rushed into the studio. Like, we signed to Victory and it was like, yo, you got to get into the studio and put your album out. You know what I mean? Like there was no waiting time. Tony was not like wait a year and write new music. It was like, Tony was cool, but it was like, yo, the time is now. Like, I got you guys. Go to the studio, grab Jimmy G. Don't worry, it'll all come together in the studio. And you think about that shit now, and you're like, bro, like who the fuck does that shit now? Like, yo, I have 30 songs right now ready to go, and we're gonna pick the best 8 for the next record. We wrote all those songs in the studio. My brother Mike came to the studio. He's helping me write lyrics. Craig, through Jimmy, Craig Ahead would come to the studio and write with us. And then the Warzone guys, Todd, Vinny, and Jay. Todd Hamilton, Vinny Value, rest in peace, Vinny, and Jay from Warzone would actually come to the studio, and then We Won't Forget, we basically sat in a circle and like wrote that song together. And it was kind of cool because, we were all talking about Ray. That was actually a really special moment to write that song with those guys, with Jimmy involved too. But a lot of funny shit with that studio experience, man. Like a lot of funny, like Jimmy would bring in eucalyptus balls because I would lose my voice every day. And he would be like, here, you got to like inhale the eucalyptus, but it's not drugs. It's not pot, and I would inhale the eucalyptus. And then after they would be in the studio and little did I know they recorded all this shit. And he'd be like, yo, we just fucking put weed in that shit. You're going to be high as fuck. and shit like that happened with Jimmy. And I'll tell you, like, we bonded with him, man. Like by the time we left that studio, Jimmy was like, rabies had passed, but we felt like Jimmy was like carrying the torch for us. And then from there, we met Roger and the rest of the New York hardcore scene. Jimmy is, of course, the godfather, like Vinny Stigma of New York hardcore. And, when you have that relationship with Jimmy, we started to meet everybody. And it was like, yo, Ray always talked about you guys, but now we can get to know you guys, and that's kind of, that opened the whole universe up for us. Now we can kind of spread our wings and do everything we want to do.
It's funny you say that because we had Seth from One for One.
That's my boy.
Nuts. We had him on the podcast just before this one, and he said the same thing while recording One for One, that some of the songs they had to write on the spot as well in the studio. He was saying when he listens back to it, it's like he cringes sometimes at some of the things because he knows that they didn't get to prepare for it properly. But from the outside, we love it.
That's
do you know
so
what I mean?
funny.
Like,
it's funny, like we have a song called Play It Safe on that record, right? And it's a 30-second song, and it's a song about safe sex. And Jimmy fucking made us write that song because he's like, yo, you guys are the youth, you gotta have a song about fucking safe sex, these fucking kids. He's like and what's so funny, like that was like a joke turned into a song where at the end of the song you hear, I'm like, play it safe, but in the beginning Jimmy's like, wrap it up, stick it in and roll them. And there's another cool part of that album is a lot of people know, some people don't know, but like all the outtakes are actually hidden at the end of that album. You just have to listen to the last 20 minutes. 20 minutes. There's 20 minutes of blank space, and then there's 10 minutes of outtakes at the end of that album.
Oh, one of them ones. Yeah, I love that hidden shit.
So it's actually kind of funny, but and you hear Jimmy talking all that shit about the eucalyptus and the bong and all that shit, and that shit is funny because sometimes it comes on like on Pandora. My son is always listening to Shutdown on Pandora now, which is super cool. Like it comes on and he'll leave it on while he's doing his homework, and one day he had "We Won't Forget" on, which is the last song on Against All Odds, and after that song, it's like dead air. And then out of nowhere, you could start hearing Jimmy talking. He's like, "Mark, are you smoking that eucalyptus bong?" And coming out of my son's room, and I'm like, "What the fuck is he listening to?" And I go upstairs, and I'm like, "Oh shit!"
So, do you want to just quickly talk? Did you tour that particular release? Did you play many shows with that? Did you come to Europe with it, with that release? Well, obviously, because you just recently signed to Victory Records, was there like a budget to do stuff, or was it still pretty much DIY, doing stuff on your own?
So no budget, I wish, but yeah, like that was the thing. Like I think we thought when we got on Victory there would be some kind of budget. No, there was no budget. but we one thing they did do was, and props to Victory, was they supported us in ways that we never had before. So part of signing the contract with Victory, and we were young, so I talk about this openly now. I was pretty like hush about this when I was younger, but like I'm openly very transparent about it now. Like Tony straight up said, "Yo, like I want to sign you guys, but I'm not signing you unless you commit to touring and making this full time what you want to do." And he said, "I'll support you guys in the sense that you'll have your music played all over the world. You'll have stuff in stores. You'll have support while you're on tour. I'll provide you t-shirts. I'll provide you CDs. I will support the band, not monetarily on a money level, but on a level of providing us merch, on a level of providing us, our albums or whatever, the vinyl to take on the road. But I need you guys to commit to doing this." Of course, that's what you want to hear from a label, because our dream was to fucking do this shit full time, right? So the second, we signed to Victory, obviously at that time, Snapcase, Earth Crisis, Strife, that big three already happened. So for us, we were like, Hatebreed was just blowing up, and we were like, dude, this is where we want to be, Victory is where it's at. Like,
yeah, Victory was
that was the label,
man.
Hatebreed's album just came out when we got signed. Satisfaction is the Death of Desire just came out. It came out in November of 97. That's the month we signed our contract. We knew Victory was like, that was the label. Really, we wanted to be on Revelation. Like that was my dream, from all of my upbringing.
For the Youth Crew, sort of like straight ahead stuff. For the straight ahead hardcore Youth Crew sort of type stuff.
I wrote Jordan Cooper the fucking most sincere letter at 16 and said, Jordan Cooper from Revelation. And I was like, I always did my homework, bro. I knew the owner of every record label. I was like, here's a video of us playing CBs. Here's my 7-inch. I was like, it is my dream to be on this record label. Whatever we got to do, if you're interested, please hit me up. Never heard back from him. Played that rabies benefit at CB's. Never wrote to Tony. Played that rabies benefit at CB's, which was a month after he died. The one with Gorilla Biscuits and Bouncing Souls and Sick of It All. And right after the set, this dude comes up to me from Victory. His name was John Regan. And he gives me his card. It said A&R. And I remember asking my brother, I'm like, what the fuck? What's an A&R? I don't know what an A&R guy does. I'm 17. And my brother's like, oh, it's artist and development, or artist and research. And whatever it stands for. And he's like, that's the guy that signs bands to Victory. I was like, holy shit. I'm like, okay. So the next day that guy called me and he was like, he's like, I'm just going to be straight up with you. Rabies told Tony all about you guys. He's like, maybe Tony's been so busy that he didn't pay attention. He's like, well, he's paying attention now. He wants to talk to you guys. Let's get on the phone. Who's 18, who's 17, who needs to have a chaperone at the fucking, at the phone call. And he's like, so the next day we actually went to dinner with him. It's kind of a weird story, but we went to dinner with this guy, John Regan, and just us, no parents. And he established that 2 of the guys in the band were already 18 and 2 of us were 17. So we actually I had to have like an adult co-sign our record contract.
And they were there.
And it's for Victory, and that's what he wanted to know. But the minute he talked to us, he basically laid it all on the table for us. He's like, we want to do a record deal with you guys. They tried to sign us to like a 6-record deal, which we thought was fucking crazy. Like that, so at the time we wound up like trying to like negotiate to just like, hey, can you just put our record out, promote it, pay us fairly? And like, dude, there was so much involved in that contract that I didn't want to get involved. Like I wasn't somebody that wanted to be involved in that. I was a young kid that didn't know any better. So it was just like, take this paperwork. Where do I sign? And just fuck, like, when can we start touring? You know what I mean? Now, at 42, I don't know that I feel the same way, but fuck, man, there was nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to pay for my band. We're going to get paid to go into the studio and put an album out. And then we're going to be able to go and travel all over the world. And you're going to support us to do that. Okay, where do I fucking sign? You know what I mean? So from there, we got to, against all odds, we toured heavy, but never Europe. We never got offered to go to Europe. If that sounds crazy, we did not get offered to go to Europe. We didn't have anybody in Europe hitting us up to come tour against all odds, which we were like kind of like taken back by. We're like, fuck, we were bigger with Rick on the 7-inch in Europe. Like, but then about a year later, MAD hit us up, and MAD was like, look, we always wanted to bring you guys. We just wanted to do it in the right way. And that's when they offered us to do the Agnostic Front tour. So for Against All Odds, we toured Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, the United States. We toured with Hatebreed. We did a full US tour with Hatebreed when Hatebreed was fucking blowing the fuck up. Like, every show sold out. That was when their Victory record was out. And then we did a full US tour with Inhuman. We headlined the US tour. Then we came home. We did a full Canadian tour. We did probably like 6 more US tours. We fucking didn't stop touring off that record. We just never got to Europe.
Damn, you put in some legwork, man. Shit.
Yeah, 9 months. I think 9 months out of 12 months in 1998 to 1999. 9 months out of 12, we were on the road.
Did you do the Warped tour?
We did the Warped tour, and that wasn't until later. That was August. We did 2 weeks of that in August of 2001.
Oh, okay.
So that was like way later. Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, we'll get into it just in a little bit, just going through. So after all that touring, and it comes to 99, you put out another EP, Something to Prove. Was that something that you guys had in mind you wanted to do, or was that something that Victory thought that would just be another addition to obviously your catalog, just to move forward as a band?
Kind of both. If you remember at that time with Victory, if you guys remember when Blood for Blood was putting singles out,
yeah,
and like Blood for Blood had just dropped I can't remember the name of the single, but it was Living in Exile. Oh, what a dope fucking EP that is. I love that EP. And there was Victory was big into doing EPs at that time. So Snapcase had put, I think, Progression Door and Learning. And then there was like a whole bunch of EPs coming out. It wasn't just ours. It was like kind of like a thing Victory was doing, like record an EP with new songs, and that'll build up the hype for the next album.
Yeah. So
we did this Something to Prove EP in Chicago. We recorded it. Actually, one of the dudes in Smashing Pumpkins owned the studio that we recorded it in. And we stayed there for like a week, and we just recorded 3 songs, but we hung out at Victory for a week every day. We were like at the Victory office, and they would have this warehouse connected to the office where they screen printed all the shirts, and they had like the distro. When I tell you guys that the kind of funny secret story is that all the bands knew about this, and when you would go to Victory, you would sneak into this warehouse, and you would just basically be like Santa Claus, and you would get a garbage bag, and you would just fucking, I don't want to use the word steal, but just
stuff your bag.
Gift yourself like every fucking record under the sun, and including your own. So it began to be funny. Like, we went there and like, get boxes of fucking Against All Odds. We dude, like at the end of the day, I'm laughing about it now because we were stealing our own records. This was our fucking it was, but like we would go there and we recorded and we hung out with Tony for like a week, and he would take us out every night. We went to a Cubs Mets game, and we went to Wrigley Field, and fucking, it was actually a really fun time, because once that EP hit, Tony actually gave us a map of what he would do to help us for the next record, where we would go to record. Europe was a big part of that record. We actually told him like, we want to go to Europe, like make it happen, and at that time it was kind of pay to play in Europe. I don't know if you guys know, like to get on the bigger tours, the record labels had to pay for you to get on those tours. Like, you weren't asked to go on tour like, yo, let me take your band on tour. It was like, yo, do you have money to pay for the tour bus? Okay, you could come on tour with us. So Victory was like, if we do that, you have to give us the money back. We're just going to take it back in your royalties. We didn't know any better. So we were like, okay, sure, here you go. And we just kind of like, we were like the yes man. Like, we never put up a fight to anything Victory asked us, but at the same time, we were traveling the world. We weren't making money, but we weren't losing it. You know what I mean? And you know, certainly we're having a good time. Nobody was upset. Nobody felt like we were being taken advantage of at the time. We were just like super young and happy to be doing what we were doing, dude. Waking up in a different country or city every day, that is a blessing. Like we didn't take that shit for granted.
How did you find Victory Records as a whole? Because like Back to Basics and Lost and Found, you do get some people talk them down as well.
Yeah. I think Tony gets, you know, a lot of harsh criticism because of things he's done that, you know, I know A Day to Remember took him to court. I know, you know, he had a lot of misdealings in the past. I got to be totally honest with you guys. I never had beef with the guy. I never had a fucking falling out with him. We got some checks early on when the records came out. They weren't big, dude. You guys would fucking laugh if I told you what they were. But like, you know, things were accounted for. It wasn't like we never heard from him or anything like that, like the stories that I hear. But you got to understand that I don't put us on the level of some of these bands. Like for us, we were like a mid-level band. Like we weren't on the level of selling hundreds of thousands of records that we were owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. No, we were a small kid on a big pole, you know? So I didn't think Tony was like scumbagging us the way some other bands did. Now it's funny you say it like that because I'm saying to myself, man, what did I get myself into? It started with Lost and Found, then I went to Riff, and then I went to Victory. Fuck, man, have I ever had like a really good experience with it? But Victory didn't do us dirty, man. I'm not gonna sit here and bullshit you guys. I cannot bullshit you guys. Like a lot of people and other podcasts, like not you guys, but like they fish for like this bad shit on Tony. And like, honestly, dude, like he just had his 50th birthday. His wife sent me a message and she's like, yo, Tony would love it if you could send him a birthday message. I fucking sent the guy a birthday message. Yo, I never had beef with him like that. But, you know, looking back, do I get checks for Against All Odds? Do I get checks? No, but that's on me, man. Like, I don't think we're sitting here selling fucking thousands of records that I'm owed money. You know what I mean? Monetarily, I feel like the fact that we got to tour the world and the fact that we got to make friends all over the place and put these records out, and monetarily that my kids could go on Spotify and type in my name and Shutdown comes up.
Yeah, that's so sick.
Yo, we won. Like, I'm cool. Like, I don't feel like we got fucked over. I don't feel like, you know, shit went south. Like, we're good. Like, I'm good. You know, I'm at peace with whatever happened.
No, man, love that. Love that.
That's dope, man.
When you're sitting there at the end of your life, you don't look back on all the money you got. You look back on.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's true.
There's a little bit of a balance in it, obviously. But everyone's different. I'll probably have to echo what Steve said. Like, yeah, obviously, who wouldn't want to have loads of money and be living the good life, so to speak? But just to be able to know that, oh man, at this particular point in my life, I went on tour with some of my really good friends, and we played all these different cities, or we put out this particular release at this time, and loads of people loved it, and it was the talk for however long it was, and it's just those little small things you remember. No one can take that away from you, like, because money's easy come, easy go.
Yeah, bro. I totally agree, man. Like the money part, like it never was about that for us. And the sad thing is, and I'll be honest with you guys, like in 2001, around September, right before 9/11, like when Shutdown stopped touring, that fucking part affected us because we did all these tours, and now we're like, you know, approaching the age where like our parents were like, haha, okay, you guys are on tour all the time to kind of be on your own now and pay your own rent and, you know, go live on your own, you know, not that in a bad way, but in a way, you know, whereas like, if you want to stay at home and you want to pay your rent, if you want to stay at home and go on tour and just come home and sleep in your room at 21, well, you're going to have to go back to college if you want to do that, you know? And that's what three of the guys in my band's parents said. My parents did not say that. My dad and mom said, you do what you want to do. We believe in you. We know you're going to make good choices. But, you know, my mom said she would love if I went back to school, but she's like, what this music has done for you since you were young, she's like, it's taken you all over the world. My dad said, dude, if I were you, I wouldn't stop. Keep going, you know?
They saw the positives out of it, definitely, innit?
Yeah, so it's like those memories. And like, I like what you said. Like you said, like, you know, a certain time it captures, like, you know, this kid put this video out a couple weeks ago, and it was from a set we did in Montreal with the Cro-Mags and Earth Crisis. And it was like, I had never seen the video. Like nobody had ever recorded this show to my knowledge. Right. But in my head, it was one of my favorite fucking shows we ever played. Right. And just out of nowhere on Instagram, this kid hits me up, sends me a message. I have no idea who this kid is. Now I kind of remember meeting him at the show, and he's like, yo, I recorded this shit on video. I'm putting all the sets up today on YouTube. And he put the set up. And when I tell you, like, that time, that moment, like that set, there was literally like, you could pull up the set on YouTube, like every kid singing every word the whole fucking show. And like I remember the fucking set like it was yesterday, but you can't take away those moments, bro. Like you can take away everything in the world right now. Fucking COVID could wipe out the fucking face of the earth, but it can never take away the fucking memories I have of those sets. Yeah. And I love telling the kids, my kids, those stories. And I love hardcore is so cool like that, bro. Cause it's like, man, the memories we have from some of those shows, bro, it's like, I want to make new ones, but fuck, man, like the best times of my life at those hardcore shows.
I love that, man. I love that.
From London's very own Ironed Out comes the brand new album, We Move As One. Featuring Pavement Strong, Pagans, Crazy Old World and a re-recorded version of ACAB, We Move As One is a 12-track dose of reality straight from the Big Smoke. Down for Life magazine calls it some of the most interesting and exciting music in hardcore right now. Pick up your copy on CD or crystal clear vinyl from the Ironed Out Big Cartel, from gsrmusic.com or from ruction.com.
The last release you put out was Few and Far Between, and that came out in the year 2000. Once you put it out, you probably toured it. Did you think that you would stop putting anything else out after that, or touring, etc.?
No, it was abrupt. It was abrupt. There was no plan to stop touring. Being super transparent, this is the first podcast I will ever say this, but I'll be told straight up with you guys, because you guys are in bands and shit, and you guys know that your bandmates are your brothers, but there's times where you butt heads with them too, you know?
Definitely.
Against Few and Far Between, and this is some real deep personal shit, but I'm going to be straight up. Few and Far Between came out, and, you know, there was a lot of pressure, we were putting it on ourselves, but we felt after all these heavy tours we were doing, you know, at that point, Few and Far Between came out. We did Agnostic Front. We did Cro-Mags. We toured with all these big bands. And we felt like the path was set up for us to kind of get to the next level. And we were right there. We felt like we were right there. We were knocking at the door. And, you know, we were selling out shows local, you know, in the States. We were going to these weird places like in Ohio and across the country, and we would now have like 300 to 400 or 500 kids at every show. We were really making a name for ourselves. We were probably at the height of like where we were building our popularity. And Few and Far Between came out. We didn't stop touring. We took no break. Victory kind of like set the precedence, and we knew where we wanted to go. So you talk about that album. We came out in September of 2000. We did a US tour with One King Down for 8 weeks, October and November of 2000. We came home for 5 days, went to Europe for 6 weeks with Ignite and Agnostic Front, 5 days in between. So we did 8 straight weeks in the States.
Wow.
Came home for 5 days and went to Europe for 6 straight weeks. Now on that 6-week tour, little did I know, there was 1 day off. So in 6 weeks, 42 days on Europe, we had 41 shows with Agnostic Front, Ignite, Discipline, Stamping Ground, and The Forgotten. We'll talk about that. But we were fucking burning out, you know? And we came home from that tour for a week, went on tour for 6 weeks with the Cro-Mags and All Out War.
That's insane.
So I'm telling you guys, like, I know, like, you know, like I have so much respect. Like I talk to Craig now and I'm like, dude, I don't know how you do it. I don't, you know, these guys are fucking kings. Sick of All, Agnostic Front, Madball. They have so much respect from me, because it's like, think about them doing this, what I'm telling you now, for fucking 25 years, 30 years. But we did this like to the point where we were burning out. We weren't partying. We weren't like living crazy, but we were burning out. And when we would get home, it was just, where do we go next? So after that Cro-Mags tour in February, we came home. I'll never forget this. We came home for 9 days after that Cro-Mags tour. We then went to Japan, Australia, New Zealand for 6 weeks. I'm now telling you, we had 15 days off in 8 months. 15 days off in 8 months of touring. I'm telling you, like, I think we might have set the record at that time. And we were like, you know, things were happening in the band. We were starting to kind of get on each other. And in New Zealand, I got very sick. I woke up in the middle of the night and I started like having like a panic attack. And the guys thought I was just having like anxiety or whatever. And I said, I can't breathe. And I wound up having an allergic reaction to this fucking plant that exists in New Zealand that apparently was in the yard of where I was staying. It's like this pollinous plant that caused my throat to close 3/4 of the way.
Oh, fuck.
And I woke up in the hospital in New Zealand, the first day of that tour in Auckland, New Zealand. We had already done Japan and Australia, so New Zealand was the last leg of the tour. And I woke up on fucking IVs and a feeding tube in my mouth and fucking like crazy fucking needles hooked up to me and everything. Basically being told like, yo, you almost died from this like allergic reaction you had to this plant. And I had to cancel the Auckland show that night. At that time, we started to talk to each other. My band came to me in the hospital and they were like, dude, like, I really think we need to take a little bit of a break. We're burning out. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, like I always run down, like, you know what I mean? But we were burning out. And not in the sense of a band that partied on the road too much, just in the sense of a band that literally took no breaks. So after that tour, we came home. We had another tour in Europe booked, but we had 3 weeks in between. So I basically stayed in bed for like 3 weeks. I did not leave my house. I was like so fucking tired. And like, they were like, dude, we're worried. Do you want to go to Europe or do you not want to go to Europe? We're like, no, fuck, let's go to Europe. So we headlined Europe for 6 weeks that tour. And that was a rough tour, man. That was like, we didn't have a bus. We were in a van. And it's cool, bro. Like we did van tours my whole life, but you know, we did the Agnostic Front tour before that on a bus, slightly different, you know? We had a hotel and a bus every night. Now we're in a little compact van and we have one bus driver who's our tour manager, who's our merch guy, our friend Rudy, who's from Holland, and he was awesome. But like we broke down 3 or 4 times, you know what I'm saying? Shit was getting rough. And we played a couple of shows and one of the guys were getting sick. Now our health was starting to get affected. And now we were like, fuck, like we really might need to take a break. And this was a Europe tour in April, May of 2001. And we came home that summer. The guys started planting the seed in my head. Yo, what if we take a break in the fall? What if we go back to school just for a semester? We're not saying we're going to do it full time, but what if we just go just for a semester? And I was like, yo, no fucking way. We can't stop now. Like balls to the wall. No fucking stop, bro. Like we're doing it. Like we're right there. Like,
yeah, that's it. You feel like you're there in him.
It was kind of like a struggle. Like the next 2 months on the road, we were in Europe and we came home and then we went back to Europe for the festivals that July. You know, like, so we did April, May in Europe and we came home for June. And then we went to July. We did 2 weeks of festivals in Europe through MAD. All the fucking awesome festivals we did. You know, we played with fucking Run DMC and Iggy Pop at Pink Pop in Belgium. Yeah. We played with Megadeth, The Misfits and Suicidal with Full Force in fucking Germany. We played another show with The Damned in Holland. And it was fucking dope. Like every show was a banger, but it was festival shows, you know? And at the last show, as I'm building up to this story, me and Dion, who's my best friend, like my brother, we started arguing because I was super bitter now that I knew that the guys were going to go back to school in September. And I was kind of being a dick to my own bandmates because I was like, yo, don't go back to school. Don't do it. I was trying to talk them out of it, right? And me and Dion kind of had words at the show. And the next day we were like, yo, the shit is getting fucking crazy. Like we need a break from each other for like 2 weeks. You know, we have like literally like, it's like a marriage. Like, yo, we need space, you know?
Yeah.
And we were driving to the Frankfurt airport, going back home from that tour. I mean, I'm talking about like 10 months of on the road from Few and Far Between. This was August of 2001. Few and Far Between came out in September of 2000. We had never stopped touring, never more home for more than 2 weeks. So, Dion and me were having words. We're best friends, but, just getting on each other's nerves. And I said, fuck you, you're a fucking pussy for fucking wanting to go back to school and not fucking stick this shit out. And next thing you know, we're in the fucking parking lot in Frankfurt Airport and we're fucking boxing in the fucking parking lot. Boom, boom, boom. Hitting each other, fucking shirts off, fucking like you thought we were wrestling, dude. It was like all the emotions and all the fucking, hard work, but it was just like there was so much blood, sweat, and tears, right? And it wasn't because we were mad at each other. I think it was just so much inside of us, right? And we got on the plane and I had a black eye and he had a busted nose. And we talked on the plane and we were like, dude, you guys know, man, we're brothers. We love you. We love each other. Like this was just a brotherly fight, But that conversation came to the point where it was like, yo, we really need to just take a small break, see what happens in 6 months. And just kind of regroup, because this is not what it's about. Like, we love you. We love each other. Like, yo, this is like, we didn't do this to fucking fight each other and like get to the point where like, we can't even be around each other. Like, yo, we want to fucking keep doing this in a positive way. We were a real positive group of people. So it was like, this was very different for us for this to happen. It was almost like shit went south,
Yeah, for real.
And, that happened, and I feel like in a weird way it was a blessing, because it was kind of like a wake-up call, because I don't know where the fuck, like, you can't, I mean, you guys can relate being on tour, like you can run yourself into the ground only so much, to the point where you either quit your band, quit life, or fucking fall into some trap, because it's like you can't do that to your body, you can't do that to your fucking mind and your well-being. You know, as much fun it is to be on the road, you have to have some breaks. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I wanted to ask about that. I mean, what was the next level for you guys? Because like Agnostic Front, Madball, like the Sick of It All, yeah, they're the pinnacle. What for you personally? What was that next level? What was that thing you was trying to gain that you didn't already have?
So for me, it was getting to like their level. So I don't think we were ever going to be on Agnostic Front or Sick of It All and Madball's level, but in New York hardcore, they are the precedent. They are, you know, if you want to do this full time and you want to do this for a living, in the sense that when I say for a living, you know, you have to support yourself too. But if you want to do it the right way, those bands set the precedent. So it wasn't to be on the popularity level of those bands, because I mean, even now you look at the new generation, like these bands like Turnstile and Knocked Loose, they're fucking huge, but I don't see a lot of the guys that I see going to Agnostic Front shows going to their shows. So it's a different crowd. So I think for us, we wanted to blend their crowd. But for me, the next level was being able to do this the way we did it for Few and Far Between, being able to do it every year, continuously put more records out, and gradually build our popularity. Because I saw an increase for us from Against All Odds to Few and Far Between. It was opening to being a mid-level band. Like if we were on a 4-band tour, we were always the opening band on Against All Odds. But as a Few and Far Between came out, now we were like 3 out of 5 on a 5-band tour, right? And now I felt like if we were on that next support tour, we got offered a tour in Europe in September of 2001. Before 9/11 happened, it was going to start in October, and it was Biohazard, DRI, Shutdown. It was a 2-month tour in Europe, and we were all going to share a bus together. Or there was going to be like 2 buses. And that was a fucking dream tour for me, because Biohazard, dude, that's like, come on, that was our dream to tour with Biohazard. They were the one band that eluded Shutdown. Like I always talk about Roger and Agnostic Front and Madball and Freddie and Jimmy. You never hear me mention Biohazard. Like we never bonded with those guys the way we wanted to. So like that was the dream. It was like, yo, here it is, Biohazard, Brooklyn on the map, shut down Biohazard, fucking take over Europe, you know? And the guys fucking turned it down for school. And they were like, Mark, our parents are putting pressure on us. Like, we got to go back to school 1 more semester and we'll make up our minds. And that's kind of where it stopped. Still keeping with the few and far between. Want to talk about the video that you guys did. I remember seeing it years ago, but the quality of the video was really grainy. So it's kind of hard to, yeah. It's my most embarrassing moment is that video. Doing the video is really weird because it's acting. So do you remember the day and getting people together and having the director say, yo, you need to do a bit more of this and a bit more of that? How was that day for you when you done that video? That video is like, I'll tell you guys straight up, like, I am so embarrassed at that video. And I got to tell you why. Because for me as a kid to put a video out, which was always a dream back then, because back then videos were the shit. And it was like, I wanted to do it where I'm from. I wanted to do it in Brooklyn, on the Brooklyn Bridge with my fucking crew behind me, singing fucking, you know, I had this vision, you know? And unfortunately, Tony was like, no, it's not going to work. He's like, I'm bringing you guys to Chicago. I'm going to have all the record label people. We're going to invite some of the hardcore kids from the hardcore scene. We're going to go on top of the Sears Tower, and I'm going to have a guy with a camcorder. People are going to be doing a circle pit around you. And he's like, we're going to have a blast. Don't worry, it's going to be awesome. I was like, dude, what about Freddie? I want to have Freddie in the video. I want to do it. Dude, I had the perfect vision for this video. Like, in Coney Island with hundreds of our fucking friends, and Freddie fucking singing the verse, like the chorus, like on the fucking ocean, like where we grew up. And like, I had this great image, but it was like, we kind of got talked into this Chicago thing, and it wasn't really talked into. It was like, I have the budget, so this is what you're going to do for the video. Yeah, of course. But we went there, and that guy who did that video, I think he did Grade, and I think he did Snapcase. Like, he did all the Victory stuff, and super cool people. Like, it was fun. It was fun to go there, but I fucking cannot stand lip singing, and I can't stand like pretending, you know what I mean? And it was a fun day because all the people that worked at Victory were super fucking cool people. Like, I got to tell you guys, like, the staff at Victory to this day, I'm friends with all of them. Like, they're really cool people. Like, these are just punk rock hardcore people that just did it for a living and worked for a record label. But we hung out, like we all went to lunch, we all went to dinner. It was about a 15-hour day. Believe it or not, that fucking bullshit video was like took 15 hours. And we were just hanging out on the rooftop, just fucking doing. And then we went to this little club where the same people from the roof came to the club, and it was just, the whole thing is so awkward. You talk about cringy. I could listen to Against All Odds any day. It's very hard for me to watch that video. I'm just being totally straight up with you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people give me shit for Tony too, because I'm on Tony's shoulders. That was all his idea. And it's like, you know, again, I love that song, and I would have loved to have Freddie in the video and us doing the video in Brooklyn. And that would have been the perfect video to me, you know?
Yeah, your image that you just described as being by Coney Island and loads of people from New York and obviously being in the area, that probably would have been a really, really good video rather than obviously being on top of a skyscraper. But if you had it your own way, that wouldn't have been the video, obviously. No,
bro. No, that whole thing was not my idea. And it's funny because I read the comments and I don't even I can't even watch the video anymore, but I'll be lying to you guys if I tell you, like, I read the comments and they're so bad. And I'm like, yeah, no, I want to go on. Sometimes I just want to put myself on blast on social media and be like, okay, this is me. It was not my idea to do this. There's literally people that like roast me on YouTube that think that it was my idea to do that video.
Everyone but us. Straight from the heart of London.
My old band in like 2001, we opened up a show for you guys in London.
Get out of here.
And it was like the hottest fucking show I've ever played. Like, and one thing I do remember is for a show that I've actually been a part of, it's the only time I've ever seen a line of people stretching around the block to get into the show.
Bro, I love the UK, man. I tell you guys all the time, like, Lou, you remember me talking to you at TSO?
Yeah, I remember.
Like, yo, it's no bullshit. Like, the Agnostic Front show, it was Astoria was the club, right?
Yeah.
Was that the name of it?
There was a venue called Astoria, yeah. So
the one that we played with Agnostic Front, it was our first show in London. And it was like mid-December 2000. It was sold out. And I remember because they kicked us out of the club and it turned into a gay club afterwards.
Yeah.
And Stigma brought us all into the club, and it was the funniest thing. That's a whole nother funny story. but that show was really, really fun for me. Roger really hyped that show up. It was like maybe the fourth show on that tour, that like 40 city tour. And we covered like 12 countries on that tour. It was the Unity Fest, and Roger hyped up London big time. He's like, yo, London's going to go off for you guys. I can't fucking wait. Like, Roger was like really hyping it up. And like, I remember the first few dates we didn't play London. I think the first 3 shows were maybe Brighton. I have the laminate somewhere, but they were Leicester, Leicester, sorry, Brighton, and one other place before London. We did like 5 UK dates on that tour. And then, but when we hit London, we got there in the morning and Roger said, I want to take you, Denise, his wife at the time, she had met him there, and they took me to like the markets in London, like where people shop. They took me out for like, you know, fish and chips and like all this other stuff, and like showed me around London, Big Ben, and showed me, like, it was so cool. And then Roger's like, yo, he's like, we got to do some fun. Every night, Roger was all about doing some fun shit on that tour. And he's like, yo, tonight, he's like, I'm going to dress up like you and you're going to dress up like me when we go on stage. And I'm like, yo, what are you talking about? He's like, yo, you got to wear my Scully. So he's like, you're going to wear my Scully and you're going to come out in a shirt. He's like, here, wear this shirt. Roger used to have these, like, remember those like gas station shirts back in the 90s that have like a name patch on them and shit?
Yeah.
So like Roger had one, but he had like the sleeves cut off, and he would come out in like a Scully with like this shirt on with the sleeves cut off, buttoned up. Kind of like a Mike Muir style shirt, like with the first button open.
Yeah.
And he would come out and they would open with, forget what song they would open with. If it was Believe, it was Something Off Gotta Go. And he would come out, and I came out to London, and he was like, yo, you got to dress like me. And I didn't do it. Like, I thought he was joking. He's like, no, put the fucking clothes on and dress like me. And like, I'm backstage and I'm about to come. And I remember the guys are like tuning up and shit, and Roger's like, here, you got to do it. And they would do funny shit like that. So like, he gives me his shirt, he gives me his Scully, and he's like, all right, at least the first song you got to go up, you know, and pretend you're me. So I go up. I wish somebody had a video of that show, because I go up and I'm like, oh, Roger, and I'm like, what's up, we're shut down or whatever. And Roger fucking comes out, he's like, yo, he's fucking doing it. So then I gave him my shirt, and he came out to London in that shirt, in my fucking Dickies and my fucking shirt, and it was like small, and it was so funny. And I remember that show, bro, because I remember how many kids were there. I was like blown away. It was fucking sea of kids front to back. And how many kids knew the words. And it was our first show ever in London. And like kids, the energy at that show was fucking wild. And after the show, before the show, like, man, the energy at that show, I can remember it like it was yesterday. And you got to understand, like my drummer, Jimmy, he's got a lot of roots in the UK and Ireland. His mom and dad and a lot of his family lives in London and also in Ireland. And it was like his dream to play London. He was like crying after that show. That's how happy he was.
Oh, wow.
Oh, damn, that's pretty cool.
He's a diehard Manchester United fan, by the way.
Oh, no.
I'm a Manchester City guy myself.
Thank you very much for having me.
Interview over.
The show that we were on the same bill, like when you headlined was opposite the Astoria, a venue opposite.
No, it was a small place, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was a Stamping Ground, maybe. Stamping Ground.
Bro, I love Stamping Ground is the shit, bro. They were so cool on that tour, bro. They hopped on midway. And I just remember, like, at that time, I remember telling them, like, you guys are the Earth Crisis of fucking Europe, man. Yeah. I love Stamping Ground, bro. They were so hard. Like, they came out. There was something about them. They reminded me of kind of like Trial meets Earth Crisis. Like, there was something so fucking heavy about them, bro. They came out. I remember the first show we played with them, they did sound check. I was like, yo, these guys are fucking dope. And they were so cool, man. Every night, if you look on that tour, they were wearing our shirt or we were wearing their shirt. I have so many pictures on that tour. I have like 4 different Stamping Ground shirts.
That's awesome, man.
So, Steve, when you mentioned about, obviously, there was a massive queue going around the block when your band played with Shutdown. Was a lot of people watching your band? Was that a highlight of the band at the time, or? Yeah,
it was cool. Like, it was BDF. I mean, we were opening up the gig, and I kind of just expected the usual kind of like first band on. People sort of like showing up during our set sort of thing. But yeah, it's busy. I just remember I'd never sweated like that on stage before.
That was a dope show. I remember that show. Really well. And that summer was so fucking brutally hot because we toured in that van. So this goes with the story I told you guys where we did that one Europe tour that year in that van. That show we played was one of those shows. And in that same tour we played, I remember, in Spain. And Steve, my guitar player, and myself, we drank like water in the hotel. We were super thirsty. And I guess like the water in the hotel had like rust in it. And we fucking started getting so violently sick that we had to like pull over to the side of the road. And then when we got to Barcelona, we went right to like the hospital. We were that sick, you know? And the guys went to like the fucking bullfights, the other 2 guys with the roadie, and we were like stuck up. But here's what I remember. The reason I say that is it was 1,000 degrees in the hospital. I was sweating and I didn't know if I was dying or if it was the heat. And I remember going to the UK on that same tour, and the heat, that tour was so brutally hot this summer. I remember that show. It was fucking crazy hot.
I think I would, at this age now, I think I would probably just pass out on stage. Like, I would just be done, man.
Don't worry, when we'll give you the kiss of life, man. But yeah, so Mark, obviously 2001, your bandmates are talking about going back to college. I mean, what was it like for yourself? Obviously, you didn't want it to end, but what did you do to fill the void, so to speak, like the gap? Obviously, with the band sort of like ceasing to play for a little bit.
Yeah, so I was really. That first month, September 11th. So just to be clear, this all happened. And when I tell you guys, a week later, September 11th happened after this whole fallout. A week later, September 11th happened, 9/11. So it definitely affected things. It definitely, like, we were in New York on 9/11, you know, I was in Brooklyn, you know, the guys were in Brooklyn. We were there. So, you know, there was pummels of smoke, you know, for God's sake, in the sky, not far from my house, you know? So it fucked everyone up mentally a little bit in terms of like priorities and what they wanted to do. I myself, at that point, I had grandparents living in Florida, and I always loved Florida. Florida was like a second home for me because I have family down here, and I wanted to come to Florida. I was like, fuck it. If the guys, I don't want to go back to school. Fuck school. I was like, I'm done with school. So I was like, let me go to Florida. And, you know, I like the beach, man. I like the ocean. I'm like, let me go to Florida and, you know, stay with my grandparents for a month. They didn't care. They were retired. They lived in a little condo, and I wasn't going to be there anyway. I was just going to go hang out at the beach every day. And that's what I did. And I came down to Florida for like a month. Lo and behold, 2 girls that I grew up with, one was from the hardcore scene. She's a very good friend of mine. told me that they were moving down here after 9/11. They were like, we want to get out of New York. We want to, move to West Palm Beach. You want to get an apartment with us? 3 people, we could split the rent. It's going to be cheaper than 2, These were my friends, like good friends. And they were like, it could kind of be like the show Three's Company. I don't know if you guys know the show Three's Company, Jack Tripper back in the day. Like girls and the guy.
I've heard of it, but I can't say I watched it before.
So it was a show about 2 girls and a guy that lived together. So I was like, yeah, you guys can help me, mac chicks and bring girls to the apartment and help me be like a bachelor in Florida. Hell yeah, I'm in, and they were laughing. So we all moved in together. I stayed in Florida. We started working in the restaurant business, in country clubs. Florida's filled with rich people and old people that play golf and pay crazy amounts of money to live in these country clubs. Well, I got a job working as a fucking waiter in the country club. And I started making a lot of money just serving these fucking rich
tips,
on tips and shit. And I wound up getting my own apartment like 6 months later and staying in Florida and really just kind of like staking my claim down here. It was hard to move back once I knew the guys weren't going to do Shutdown full time again. It was like I felt like I didn't have any place there in New York. You know what I mean? I didn't want to start a new band. I wasn't trying to do Shutdown without them, which a couple of people were trying to tell me to do that. And that was never my plan. So it was for me just kind of like a rebirth in Florida, not from hardcore, but just kind of where I lived, and I started going to shows down here. I remember the first 2 months I lived down here, H2O came down here and they played with Newfound Glory. And, Chad from Newfound Glory was from Shai Hulud.
Yeah, correct.
Shutdown's first Miami show ever was with Shai Hulud and Indecision. So I knew Chad from when we were 15 years old. And I remember I came and I got up on stage with H2O and I did Guilty by Association and I did Freddie's part, this part that Freddie sings on that song. And I remember, Toby's like, dude, you really going to stay in Florida? He's like, are you going to move back to New York? And I was like, no, man. I was like, I think I'm going to stay here. He's like, well, you need to start a band, do something, do something, stay busy down here. And that was kind of like, I started going to shows down here. I made some friends down here and I never went back to New York. Shutdown did a show at CB's a year later for a benefit that Frank Collins was a guy in my brother's band Confusion. And he was a guy that was in 9/11. He was a Port Authority officer. He died on a motorcycle in a car accident, like 2003. And we did a benefit show at CBGB's for him. And that was like our first show back in New York from stopping to play in 2001. But yeah, man, I've been down here like 19, 20 years. 3 kids later, on getting married for the second time next year. And this is where I'm at, man. It's funny. I talk to Freddie about it all the time because Freddie's like, you're not the first person to ever move to Florida. I'm the first person to ever move to Florida. And I was like, and he's like, and it's true, but Hoya lives down here now too. Hoya lives like an hour away from me down here. Florida is kind of like where you retire. It used to be where you retire in New York. Now it's like, in hardcore, your later years, you come down to Florida.
Why not?
For the warm weather. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm just here for the weather, bro. That's all it is. New York just had like a fucking ice storm, and my mom is 78. God bless her. She'll never move down to Florida, but like, man, that's the fucking last place I want to be is shoveling ice out of my fucking car, dude.
Yeah, for real.
I wake up now, I'm looking out of my house and, it's 80 degrees today and, it's beach weather today. You know what I mean? And it's not rubbing it in, but it's like, why would anyone want to go to the fucking cold when you're living here your whole 20 years?
I kind of feel where your mom's coming from because like, I'm pretty much the same as well. If I've never moved anywhere to live. I've moved houses, but I've only ever been in London. So if someone said, "Oh, go and live down by the beach," it'd probably be nice for a little bit, but then after a while, I'd be like, "Oh, I just missed that rustle and bustle of that city urban landscape lifestyle." Yeah. But obviously, your mum was same. She's 78 years old. All she's ever known is probably New York City,
Brooklyn. That's all she knows, bro.
Yeah.
She takes the train, the bus. Like people in Florida, like you'll never see old people on the bus or the train because it's too hot. My mother, like, she's been mugged, like, walk into the train, like, classic New York story, like, somebody stole her purse, like, 3 or 4 times. You think that makes her scared? Hell no. Like, my mother is 78. She takes the bus and the train everywhere, every day. You know what I mean? She's a tough Irish New York woman. And she's, like, gritty like that. But it's like, it's hard. For me, I came down here. I wasn't trying to retire in Florida. It was just to kind of get it. I was a little brokenhearted with the Shutdown stopping touring, and I wanted to get out of town. I didn't want to have to be in New York every week. And why is Shutdown not playing? Why are you guys? Did you break up? Did you do this? Did you do that? So to be honest, I kind of ran away for 6 months. But escape hardcore. It was just to like regroup my own mentality. You know, now that Shutdown wasn't a 24/7 thing. What am I going to be doing with my life, and where am I going to be taking it, type of thing? You know what I mean?
So you just up and try somewhere new, different environment and different thing, and obviously no regrets, because now, as you just mentioned, you're getting married next year. You got 3 beautiful kids, so that's the main thing, isn't it? You take with it in life, I guess.
Was there any point in that period that you thought Shutdown would never happen again, or did you always know that you'd play again at some point?
I knew it was going to happen. I know it. Like, I knew that the guys would get the itch. Like, I don't want to say get the itch, because they continued to play music after Shutdown. The guys never stopped music. Like, Steve actually started a band with my brother John, and it was like more of a progressive band. I wouldn't put the word hardcore in it, but and Dion was in another project as well. But I knew it would never go away permanently. Like, I knew in my heart it would never go away permanently. What I was mad about was that we put all this work in to the point of when we stopped. And it was probably like the exact time we shouldn't have stopped, because we were right at that point, you know. But you know, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back, 2 steps forward type of thing. You know, for me with Shutdown, I stayed in touch with the guys. Like, you know, a lot of things happened those first few years after Shutdown stopped touring. Steve's mom died of cancer, breast cancer. His mom was a big part of our band. Believe it or not, she bought us our first trailer to connect to our van. She funded a tour on a credit card before we were on Victory that we paid her back over 2 years that we took to pay her back. And Steve was like crushed by this. Obviously, you know, it was very devastating for him. That happened in 2002. So there were instances where we, very close to after the breakup, we talked about getting back together really quick to do it again. And then all these things happened. Steve's mom passed away, 9/11, and all these different circumstances happened. And it was like, well, do you want to play CB's for a reunion show? Not a reunion show, but like, you know, Frank Collins died. And do you want to play CB's for this tribute? And so it was like, we stayed to the point where we weren't really broken up. We were playing 1 show a year, but we weren't touring and we weren't putting new music out. So we were kind of like in that weird place you see bands in now, where it's like you're playing shows, you're not putting new music out, but you're not really doing anything.
Well, I prefer a band doing that than, and I'm not slagging any bands off that have done this, but bands that say it's their final show and do this big show and then come back 2 years later.
No, that's fucking corny. I don't like that either. Like, and that was a big thing with me. I didn't want people to think that with us. Matter of fact, 2006, we played the Super Bowl of Hardcore, and now known as the Black and Blue Bowl. But Freddie and Cousin Joe put on the Super Bowl of Hardcore. I mean, hell, it's going on, 15 years now. We were supposed to play last year, if you guys saw the flyer, but it never happened.
Oh yeah, that lineup was big. That for last year's
big lineup. So
big lineup.
We, you know, I remember in 2006 when we played that show, and I think it was Freddie or Cousin Joe was like, "Do you want us to put reunion?" And I was like, "Fuck no, I never want to put that word reunion." I'm like, if we're playing 1 show a year, it's not a reunion, you know?
Yeah.
We're trying to stay relevant to the point of just, this is how much we could do it. But I was never comfortable with that. And I feel the same way about the bands that like this great last reunion, great last show. And then 2 years later, it's another one.
Yeah.
Corny, you know? So it's like, that was a big thing with me too, where I didn't want that to happen. Like even with the Rabies tribute, this flyer right here, this one.
That's a top
2017. Yeah.
Drew Stone put the show on, you know, and he's like, well, it's technically a reunion. And I was like, I just don't like the word reunion, you know, because that's not, I never left. Like people think I left the scene. I never left the scene. I'm not coming back to the scene. It's just Shutdown is just not playing the way we used to. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you for bringing us into that. So obviously Drew Stone put it together and he obviously asked you guys to play. But what other bands played that day?
So you had Regulate, Kill Your Idols, and Fireburn, which was, you know, rest in peace, Todd Youth.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and what's his face from Terror and Nails was in Fireburn. Todd Jones was playing at that show too with Fireburn. It's sad to say that 2 people in that Warzone set are not here today.
I know, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Todd Youth and Vinny Value.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really, I got to tell you guys, Vinny Value was, he was really close with the Shutdown guys. I don't know if you guys knew this, but he actually played drums for The Last Stand for 2 or 3 shows. He filled in for drums for the guys. You know, The Last Stand is all the guys in my band with my brother. He actually, Vinny Value played drums for them, filled in for 2 or 3 shows. He's an old friend, man. I was pretty devastated by that. And then Todd Youth, it's just that, you know, that was a horrible thing. I look at that video now and it's hard because I see those two guys are gone. I mean, that show was not even 4 years ago. And it's like,
it's kind of mad.
Those guys have left us, and it's crazy, you know? Sonny filmed Sonny 856. I mean, his videos are incredible. Shout out to Sonny. I love him. He's a great guy. But he caught a moment where like I get real emotional when I see it. And when I did the Warzone song with the guys, because you know, Shutdown played, and then I got up and I did a Warzone song with them, and Free at Last. And Free at Last is a song Rabies wrote, because you know Rabies went through drug addiction and stuff, and Free at Last is a song Rabies wrote about overcoming addiction and shit. And Todd actually, if you go back and watch that set, it's a beautiful set to watch. If you watch it front to back, Walter starts to set out on acoustic guitar. So when you catch the song that I did, it's about 20 minutes into the set. I'm talking about addiction, and Todd and I catch eyes and like just kind of give each other like the you know, brotherhood eyes, you know? And it really fucks me up when I see that. Like I start crying because it's like, man, like this guy was probably suffering mentally, like, and nobody even knew it, you know? And it's like a couple years later, we lose Todd, you know what I'm saying? But like, It's just like hardcore does that to you, you know? Like I look at these videos sometimes, like, and even with Vinny, like jamming with those guys in the studio, like the rehearsal for that set was more special than the actual set to me, you know, being in the room with those guys to do shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for real,
and,
man.
It's part of their legacy, but it's really sad because two really good guys, you know, Vinny and Todd Youth were the salt of the earth type of people, you know? And it sucks. It sucks that that's the last time you'll ever really see a Warzone set, because there is no more guys in Warzone. 3 of the 5 have died, you know? And I'm just happy that we were a part of it. I'm happy that Shutdown got to do that. For me, it was the perfect show for us to do. What better a show in Tompkins Square Park on the Lower East Side on a Sunday than to play for Rabies, you know? And it was awesome, dude. It was a great time.
I actually wanted to go out to that show. Like I thought about it, but just at the time, I just think financially, I just didn't have the money to do it. But when I saw the flyer and the lineup, I was like, oh, this would be such a great show to go to. I mean, it's going to be the norm now, outdoor shows, but for an outdoor show in 2017 in Tompkins Square Park as well, that was pretty cool. Like just the idea of it, and like then seeing the videos and seeing how many people were there. There was even like people who weren't even into hardcore who were bad as well. So that feeling of seeing people who were like looking at this thing going like, oh shit, all these people have come out for this. This is like, it's really cool. So respect to everyone who put that together, all the people who done the rigs and the stuff, and just everyone who was just there, who was just to celebrate someone's life. And obviously
it was beautiful. Everybody will tell you that day, like I like that you said, like, see the way you can get that from watching the set. Everybody felt it that day. Like there was a real beautiful thing going on that day where like everybody in the park was like hugging each other, and like there was no cliques, there was no separation, there was no division. The straight edge kids weren't in the corner, the fucking, you know, the hard guys weren't in the back. Like it was so different in that day. The vibe and that energy of that day was so beautiful. My girl was with me, and it was her first dose of like actual New York hardcore, like in New York City. And she likes New York hardcore, but like she had never been in that scene like that. And like she said to me, she goes, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Like the way you guys, like that set, that Rabies tribute set, like the way Walter started it and the way it was finished with Lou and Civ doing As One, and then doing Young Till I Die with everybody singing at the end. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. But if I would tell anybody that hasn't seen that, go on YouTube on Sonny 856's page and watch the Warzone tribute set from front to back, and tell me at the end when Young Till I Die is played, 7 seconds cover, and Todd Youth busts out the fucking first guitar riff to Young Till I Die. You tell me you don't get goosebumps. If you don't get goosebumps, you're not a fucking hardcore fan.
You're a monster. Before we wrap it up, I've got one more question. I remember when I was at Sound of Revolution Fest, which is now called Revolution Call, and its name has changed. But I remember, obviously, that was one of the main reasons I went, because I've missed it previously. I think there was 4 editions. So Wemmer's band, Knuckle Dust, had played, I think the 2nd edition you played. But I couldn't make it, sadly, because I think my father had recently passed away, so it wasn't possible for me to go. Then the next year after that, I couldn't go because it was a memorial for my father. It just all happened to be on the same weekend. So, but then once I saw Shutdown was on it, I was like, oh, I'm definitely not missing it now. Like, I have to, because I'd never seen you guys before until I remembered that I had, but briefly. But I just, you played Tsunami Fest in 2011 in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that was through Richie and actually through Chris from Mushmouth.
Because you guys played on the Sunday, and I think just after like 2 days of partying, it was just sort of like the Sunday was like, oh shit, man, I'm just so done with watching bands. And I didn't really appreciate you guys at the time, like of seeing you. So then
I didn't realize you were at that show.
Yeah, I was at that show, man. I was just still a young pup though. I was just going at the shows. That was the first time I actually like travelled outside of the UK to actually go to a show. Like, so not the first time, but one of many times. But that was like a big festival wise.
Yeah,
that was like one of the first ones. I think it was my first time in Pennsylvania as well. But I remember that because I remember you guys were on it. But obviously,
Blood for Blood killed it the night before.
Yeah, they did. I remember that. Yeah, they took a long time to come on stage and that, but when they did eventually arrive on stage, they did kill it. Like, I remember just the room was just packed, like just absolutely packed. But yeah, it's a great time, that Tsunami Fest. But then obviously fast forward many years, like 6-7 years later, to obviously to Holland. And it seemed, and obviously, because I see you while I was backstage, I saw you and I was like, oh shit, that's Mark from Shutdown. I got to go say hello, like that proper. I had that fanboy feeling, but I was like, yeah, let me just go and do it. So I went up to you, obviously we got talking and stuff. But and as you mentioned earlier on, you said you was really tired because obviously you'd been traveling and you'd been all over the place. And I do remember you was really enthusiastic, but I could tell at the time you did seem a little bit tired and stuff. But I remember we just had like a really good chat and we just sort of like got to sort of like catch up. And it's the first time you ever spoke to me and the first time I ever spoke to you. But just the way how you spoke, I just felt like, oh man, this is a real stand-up guy. Like you didn't have to talk to me. You could have just been like, yeah, whatever. Because you know, sometimes you talk to people who are from the hardcore scene, the older guys, you try to have a conversation and sometimes they're just not really into it. I mean, I'm babbling on a little bit, but I just want to say I just appreciated at the time that you was like, oh yeah, I've got time to talk to this person. So,
well, bro, as soon as you mentioned, I appreciate that. But like for me, and you know this, you probably knew this 5 minutes into meeting me, that is the hardcore, like, should never be about egos like that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm nobody to nothing to no one, you know, but just the fact that anybody would want to take 5 minutes and fucking talk to me, I'm fucking privileged for that person. You know, that's just my mentality. That's the way I grew up. That's the way I was raised. It's funny, Wema, because I think I started talking to Lou about Knuckle Dust because we started talking about UK bands that I like. And I was like, yo, Knuckle Dust is dope. Stamping Ground is dope. I'm like, who else is there from the UK besides those two bands? And he's like, yo, Knuckle Dust are my boys. And I was like, oh shit. Because I know from you guys, you know, you guys became really, really close with like, you know, Mad Joe and Richie and all the Wisdom guys. And that was kind of like the click that for me, like, they were like blowing Knuckle Dust. They were pushing Knuckle Dust years ago, you know? And like, that's how I heard of you guys, like through Richie. And you know, when we first started doing shows in 2010, again, we did a show on the Bowery that Black and Blue Productions booked with Wisdom and Chains. And I feel like that was like right around the time where like, they were like, even on social media, like Wisdom and Chains was always pumping Knuckle Dust, you know? And I know Knuckle Dust has been around forever. So it's like, it's funny. I went back and watched a couple of videos yesterday and I was like, damn, man, Knuckle Dust was so fucking dope. There was a video I was watching yesterday. I was like, why can't our videos look like this?
I appreciate that, man.
It's true. Sorry to cut you off there, but it's true. Like, so obviously you guys would have played Ready Fest last year in 2020 because we had it all booked. Because I remember we spoke and I was like,
yeah, I was so excited about
to see if we could have got that. I mean, if stuff comes to open up again, we will still obviously definitely love to have you guys back on and to definitely you guys to play. But yeah, Knuckle Dust played Ready Fest the same year. Was it 2019 when Marseille was that same year that they played Ready Fest as well? Yeah, I think 2019.
So. Did you do the one with Strife or was that two separate shows?
Yes, that was. Yeah. Was that the one? Yeah,
it was. Yeah, but Strife played a different day.
Strife played on a Friday and Knuckle Dust played on a Saturday. Knuckle Dust fucking. I mean, I don't know any. I mean, obviously the guys will probably say, yeah, that was a shit set, but most people would say every time they see Knuckle Dust play, like it's just pure energy, and everyone's just like leaves the room just feeling like, oh, I've just been at a fucking show. Like even people who've been watching them for like 20 years will still feel the same way and say that they always bring it live. So yeah.
What year did you guys start?
1908.
Our first release was in 96. So
I remember when we first toured here. That's why I'm saying, because like to me, Knuckle Dust and Stamping Ground were like the names in the UK. That was like, I know like there's many more. I know that. So no disrespect to any of the other UK bands, but like there was like, New York hardcore, European hardcore, you have different names in different countries. And like, those were the names in the UK. Like, that's who you wanted to play with. If you played in the UK, you wanted to play with Stamping Ground or Knuckle Dust. That's who you wanted to be on a show with, If you went to, it's just like, if you went to, I'm trying to think of different countries and other bands, but, like Germany has their own pockets of specific bands, you know what I mean? But for New York hardcore, I want to say this because I think it's true. I think the UK hardcore scene, for whatever reason, it feels so much similar to the New York hardcore scene, just on a different level and on a different country, that when I watch Knuckle Dust shows on YouTube, or when I watch things, when I watch sets and I see the kids and the energy, it feels like New York hardcore. It just feels like it's the London version of New York hardcore, if that makes sense.
No, totally, because New York hardcore is our biggest influence, or my personal biggest influence. So outside of Agnostic Front, Madball, it was then Shutdown, and you guys are a massive influence on us, and especially when that New York hardcore documentary dropped, and we've talked about on this podcast a few times. When that one dropped, that was like game over for London. Like, we was copying the dance moves.
I fucking love that one, dude. I still listen to that. The Madball, like, it's funny because Madball recorded that set that's on that documentary where they're playing at Coney Island High, and like you see all like Rick on stage and all these guys along, and that set was recorded from the soundboard. So like, I have that set on, I think it's like, I have it on like something on my phone where like I just press it, and like when Madball goes into the New York City song on that documentary, like when they do New York City Live with like Matt Henderson, and Stigma's not even plugged in and he's like playing.
Yeah.
And Matt Henderson is fucking like ripping the fucking chords, and like, Freddie is just like this like force to be reckoned with on stage, like bouncing from wall to wall. Bro, that to me is like my heart. Like, that gives me goosebumps just watching it now. Like, that to me is hardcore. Like, that is what I love. That's my number one. Like, a lot of kids growing up, it's Mad Agnostic Front and Sick of It All, and those are in my top 5. But because I'm younger, and I'm 42, but younger in the sense, I'll be 42 this year, but younger in the sense that like my generation, it was Madball. So Madball are like my number one, they're like my generation's number one. Of course, I fucking adore and worship Agnostic Front, Sick of It All those bands. But like, for me to watch that and be a part of it and go to that show, I was at that show. I was 16 at that show, fucking somewhere in that video, and like, bro, I love that shit. Like, I'm glad you brought that up, because that documentary, that was the most beautiful time for a kid in New York hardcore to be going to shows. That documentary, it has so much of an influence on Europe. Me too, man. Yeah, around the world, man. So how comes, I've always wondered why Shutdown wasn't in it. You was a thing. So we got signed to SFT right when that came out. So it was like right at that, we actually put an EP out. It came out in 97, and that documentary came out like right when he actually signed us right when he was putting that out, which was the only reason that we weren't on that. But and that was another thing. SFT was really cool because they were like, he wasn't trying to like sign us to a long-term contract or anything like that. It was like, yo, let me just pay for your EP. I'm going to put your EP out. I'm going to promote it. Whatever you want to do after that, you can go do. And that was so cool because it was like, yo, if we want to stay on SFT and put a full album out, good. If we want to go to Victory, or God willing, we get an offer from another label, we're not like tied down to this label. So Kevin Gill was mad cool like that. Like, he was like, yo, I'm just going to put your shit out. I'm going to promote it. Whatever you guys need, I'll do. And, whatever you want to do after, like, I'm not going to get mad at you. I'll be happy for you if you could do something better, and that's kind of exactly what happened with SFT, which was perfect. Quick sidebar, is he working? What's he doing now? In contact with him? He's doing games or something? Yeah, he's a professional wrestling announcer. Oh, really? I don't know the wrestling. It's not WWE, but it's one of the big ones. And he lives in San Francisco. And he's also he has a pretty big podcast. I want to say he has like, thousands and thousands of fans and listeners. And it's all about wrestling though. Didn't he do some shit with ICP, like Juggalo shit as well, like Kevin Gill? Oh yeah, he's heavy into ICP. Like he at one point he was like, he was on their like team of people, they have like their like team or whatever they do. And like, he's very connected with them, and he's always been about that life. Like, he didn't leave hardcore to do that. Kevin was part of wrestling. When I met Kevin Gill, he was a wrestling guy. It was a wrestling guy in hardcore. Like, he was loving that shit. Like, there was ECW was like a big thing, and it was like extreme wrestling, and Kevin was always into that. So I'm glad to see him do that now. It's his passion,
I love his bit in the documentary when they go, yo, you couldn't even go to shows back in the day. As soon as you walk in, be like, bam, 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 get punched in the face. He's funny in that part of the doc, man.
I remember when he was making that documentary, like, so when Shutdown got signed to SFT, like, he was actually like editing it, and I would go to the editing sessions and I would watch the videos and I'd be like, yo, this is so fucking cool, you know? All the bands I love, like Crown of Thorns and Madball, District 9, and that District 9 album is so good. And, you know, VOD and Fahrenheit. And he had such a cool thing going on because all those bands were so different, bro. Like Fahrenheit brought something totally different to the game, bro. They were like, to me, Fahrenheit was like the new Burn. Like they were like so different. They were so eclectic and they had this like vibe to them. They were groovy. Then you had District 9 that was just straight fucking from the streets, Bronx fucking raw ass hardcore. And then you had Vision of Disorder, who fucking was just like infancy stages before they got on Roadrunner, who were putting out these fucking dynamic demos where like, you know, this singer would like use these vocal effects that people didn't know what the fuck he was doing. And like, next thing you know, like they were adding singing and it was kind of like this Life of Agony style, but more heavy. And Kevin signed all these different bands. Then you throw Shutdown in there. We're completely different. We're like Youth Crew style. So he really prided himself in having, and No Redeeming Social Value. How could I forget them? You know, they're the party band. So it's like he had every different style. And I think that was really smart of him at that time to kind of incorporate all these different styles of bands. He never did one of the same band.
That's why New York Hardcore is so unique. Just you mentioning like 5 or 6 different bands who are like all UK. I mean, maybe VOD who were from Long Island, but obviously still comes under New York Hardcore in the whole sphere of it. But different bands, but obviously the same sort of ethos and energy and just wanting to sort of like get themselves out, or even not getting themselves out. They're just having the chance to play some music and just meet up with like-minded people and just do their thing. So that's
it's
cool.
It's crazy, bro. And then think about it this way, because we're all, you know, I feel like we're all about the same age roughly, but
yeah, close to.
Think about it this way. Like we were all like 21, 22. Kevin Gill was only 25 and he was putting this shit out on his own. Like think about a 25-year-old now doing this shit and you're like, fuck, it's kind of young. No, Kevin Gill was running a record label. He was like 24 years old. You know what I'm saying? I was 17 touring on that record label. Like I think about it now and I'm like, my kid's 14 and he's like sheltered and I don't know what the fuck he's going to do. And it's like, bro, like things are very different than they were. You know what I'm saying? And it's like I'm looking at kids now and, you know, I think Knocked Loose, they're pretty young. I want to say they're like 22, 23. Maybe they're a little older now, but it's cool. But it's like, man, it's crazy to think that generational difference now of like, yo, you talk about that documentary, Wema, like that shit was put out. Like Freddie in that video was only 19 singing at Coney Island High. Like, yo, tell me you don't think he's so much older when you watch that.
Yeah, you know? You think he's really older. Yeah. But obviously he's had the experience and his craft has obviously been around his older brother, obviously Roger. So he grew up in that environment. So it almost feels as if like he's always been a part of that. Like it's not like this guy, he's just someone who just came about.
He's born into it.
Like, yeah.
Kind of like me. I was kind of born into it too, just because of my brothers.
Yeah, your story's real, man. Like you went to a show and then 3 years later, you was up on the stage playing. So it's pretty big, man.
Crazy, yeah. Like I think about that, like when we were started out and I would go to shows and I would, you know, and I still love all these bands. That's the greatest thing about hardcore. It's not like you become friends and you stop listening to the band. I fucking listen to Madball now more than I ever did. And I'm closer with Freddie now than I ever was. So it's like, it has nothing to do with it, hardcore. You know what I mean? It's like, you always are able to separate that, you know, and it actually, you feel good when you know that your friends' bands are putting these dope ass records out. Cause you're like, damn, man, my friends are fucking pretty talented and like this fucking music rules, you know?
Yeah. So I've just got one last question and then we can wrap it all up. But good friend of mine, Ferg, who's also in the Radio Eye Collective, I think you might have briefly said hello to him as well last time we met. He wanted to just ask if you could add Tangible to the set if you do manage to come over and play, because he didn't hear it when you guys played it in Belgium. So,
yo, you know, it's funny. You could tell him this. And real quick, I thank you guys for having me. I know I tend to ramble on and I'm a bit of a storyteller, long-winded, but they're all accurate stories and they're all like, I cherish these stories, man. I love talking about this shit. So thank you guys. I really appreciate you giving me like an outlet to talk about it. Like, yo, my girl will tell you, like, I look forward to this shit. You know what I'm saying? I have it on my refrigerator, you know, 9 a.m. UK podcast circled, and my kids have been like, Dad, you're doing the podcast on Sunday. It's so cool, you know? So thank you guys for giving me the outlet. But to answer that question, Tangible we didn't cover this at all, but we're putting a new album out. And
sick.
Jerry Farley, who is a very good friend of ours. If the name sounds familiar, he produced the last 3 Sick of It All records. His name is Jerry Farley. He's now a producer. He's an old Brooklyn head that we grew up with. Before he knew Sick of It All, before he was a producer, he was a kid that went to Shutdown shows in our van that grew up with Dion. And now he's a big time record producer. We're doing all these records. He put out he does everything. I mean, he puts out all the metalcore stuff, and I think he just did the new Lamb of God record. Like, he's really a great producer. Life comes full circle because he's producing our new record and writing songs right now. We have about 7 songs done, and every Sunday we get together on Zoom and we rehearse, and we're putting new music out at the end of the year in conjunction with the next time we tour Europe. We want to have a new record out, and Tangible, on our new record, we're putting 7 to 10 new songs, and we're re-recording 3 old songs, and Tangible is one of them.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Awesome,
there you go,
man.
Ferg. Straight from the horse's mouth, mate.
Yeah, so we're working on that stuff right now. The new shit is crazy. Dion is like my bass player. He's been sitting, he lives in New Jersey, and he's a high school principal, and he's a dean of students for a high school in Manhattan, which is crazy to say, but he works from home, and they haven't sent him back, and he's been writing like crazy. They're still in the band The Last Stand. They're on that compilation. You guys have been seeing a lot of promotion. The Back to New York Hardcore Roots compilation, the A7 compilation that Drew Stone's putting out.
Oh yeah, I've seen that A7
so
thing.
I want to shout that out because The Last Stand has a song on that called I Can't Look Back, and it's fucking amazing. Like, people are going to love the fucking song when they hear it. And that is the Shutdown guys with my brother Mike singing.
Oh, okay.
And we're also writing, we have new songs now. We don't have a title for the record yet, real infancy stages, but we have 3 labels that want to put it out. So one's from Europe, 2 are from America. Guest vocals. I might have Freddie on the record. Maybe I'm talking to him about doing another song, kind of doing a follow-up to Few and Far Between. And just like putting out like a killer new record that people will not see coming for like 20 years. And I got to tell you, like, the shit that I'm hearing now, like, I'm so excited about it. Like, we're going to be in the studio sometime in the summer, hopefully, to record it. And the hope is that before we get to Europe, which in my head, MAD talks about the fall. I'm going to say realistically, I think 2022, you'll see us in Europe.
Yeah.
And with that, a new record will be with us, and new music, and Tangible is going to be on that record. So you could tell Ferg that Tangible is going to be on that record.
Awesome,
Sick.
man.
That's brilliant. What a great way to end that.
And dude, I hope Knuckle Dust can play with us, man. I know you guys don't do it, but I will tell you, like, I would love for a perfect setting would be the Ready Eye Festival. Maybe like a comeback hardcore show, because fucking all of us haven't been able to go, and like, all of us being able to be together and play together, dude, that would be fucking amazing. I can't wait. London was my number 1 on that fucking show list. You know that. And it was like, I was really looking forward to it, dude. Everywhere I did, every interview I did, you guys could go back and see. I said London is the one show I'm really looking forward to.
Oh, awesome,
so I can't wait to get there, bro.
I just hope it does happen. Remaining very hopeful. Let's see how things go.
God, please.
So that was that. Mark Shutdown, thank you so
amazing,
much
man.
for sitting down for us. Like, we really appreciate it. As you obviously have said that you love that we reached out to you, obviously, to come on to obviously tell your story. I mean, you've done previous podcasts in the past. You probably haven't done one from the UK, so obviously
never. Yeah, this is my first UK one, bro, and I appreciate you guys. And truthfully, Lou, man, like, we're boys, bro. Like, hardcore, to me, this shit is special, man. Like, we're family. Like, yo, I want to be together on these shows, and I want to play so fucking bad, man. I miss it so much, but all we could do is still fucking these podcasts, stay in touch, keep the music connected. Like, we listen to this shit every day, but the way to stay in touch are these podcasts. So like, I love doing this shit, like, I'm thankful that Drew does his New York Hardcore podcast. I watch it every week. Like, there's got to be a way that, society's trying to break everything apart right now, but I feel like there is a way that hardcore, we can keep connected. And this type of podcasts are the way we keep connected. This is like the substitute of going to a show right now. Staying connected through these types is the best way. So I'm just thankful you guys fucking give a shit about us this many years later, and we have an outlet to talk, man.
Appreciate him. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, man.
Thanks, guys.
That was the Everyone But Us podcast. I'm even lost for what episode this is. What episode is this, Steve?
28, I think.
28. Oh,
28.
We're nearly coming up to the magic 30, the 30. Like, we should do like a anniversary edition on the 30th. What should we talk about?
We could just do one of them like outtakes episodes.
Just Wemmer saying claps in face for half an hour. Yeah, it could do. But anyway, thank you guys. Whatever you're doing, stay safe. We hope to see you guys very soon. Obviously with another podcast or hopefully at a show. But until then, take care and all the best. Peace.
You're listening to the Everyone But Us podcast, straight from the heart of London.